প্রতি আস্থা রাখেন,
Trust the armed forces.
আমি সমস্ত দায়-দায়িত্ব নিচ্ছি।
I take all responsibility.
আপনাদের জানমাল এবং আপনাদেরকে আমি কথা দিচ্ছি,
I promise all of you.
আপনারা আশাহত হবেন না। ইনশাআল্লাহ আপনাদের যত দাবি আছে সেই দাবিগুলো আমরা পূরণ করব।
I assure all of you that we will meet your demands.
ফিরিয়ে নিয়ে আসব। আপনারা আমার সাথে সহযোগিতা করেন।
Please support us.
দয়া করে আর এই ভাঙচুর, হত্যা,
Stop the murder, stop the violence, stop the destruction.
এগুলো থেকে বিরত হন।
Please remove yourself from this violence.
আমার কথা মতো চলেন, আমাদের সাথে যদি একসাথে যদি কাজ করি,
Listen to us, work with us.
আমরা একটা সুন্দর পরিণতির দিকে আমরা অগ্রসর হতে পারব।
We will work to a proper solution for Bangladesh.
মারামারি করে এই সংঘাতের মাধ্যমে আমরা আর কিছু অ্যাচিভ করতে পারবো না।
We cannot achieve anything through violence.
পাবো না। সুতরাং দয়া করে আপনারা সমস্ত ধ্বংসযজ্ঞ, সমস্ত অরাজকতা, সমস্ত সংঘর্ষ থেকে বিরত হন।
Therefore, I ask all of you to stop the sangharsh, to stop the violence, to stop the protests.
প্রতিটা হত্যার বিচার করা হবে, প্রতিটা অন্যায়ের বিচার হবে।
There will be decisions which are taken about everything wrong that has taken place.
নেতারা এখানে উপস্থিত ছিলেন, আমি ওনাদের ইনভাইট করেছিলাম এখানে।
I've invited all the leaders over here. We've had a conversation.
আমরা একটা সুন্দর আলোচনা করেছি।
It's been a positive conversation.
এই আলোচনাটা
in that conversation
ফলপ্রসূ হবে বলে আমি মনে করছি এবং আমরা একটা সুন্দর একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে
in that conversation we spoke about the creation of an interim government, and I assure you that the interim government will work.
করেছেন এবং এখন ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে আমরা
All right, we'll come back to audio in just a moment. That's the Bangladesh Army chief over there saying that there is an interim government which is going to be formed in Bangladesh. That interim government is going to be formed on the basis of a conversation which has taken place in the last little while with several opposition leaders and other political leaders over there. He's made an appeal to all of the protesters to end the protests, to end the murders, to end the violence, and has said to work with the army and to have faith in the army. And he's promised the protesters, let's just keep listening in.
এবং শান্তি শৃঙ্খলার পথে ফেরত চলে আসে।
Please return to a path of
অনেক ক্ষতি
peace.
হচ্ছে, অর্থ সম্পদের ক্ষতি হচ্ছে, জানের লোকজন মারা যাচ্ছে।
People in the villages have died as well.
আপনারা বিরত হন এবং আমাদের সাহায্য করেন। আমি সমস্ত দায়িত্ব নিচ্ছি।
Please help us. I take all responsibilities.
ধন্যবাদ।
চেষ্টা করছেন, আমরা আবারও শুনি।
Thank you.
না, এটা খুব আর্লি স্টেজ। আমরা যাব মহামান্য রাষ্ট্রপতির সাথে যে আলাপ আলোচনার মাধ্যমে এটা আমরা করব। আজকে এখানে জামাতের আমির ছিলেন, আমাদের শীর্ষস্থানীয় নেতৃবৃন্দ এখানে ছিলেন।
All right, we're waiting for this audio to be restored.
দিয়েছেন এবং আমি আশা করি যে ছাত্ররা সেই বার্তা শুনে ওরা কথা ওনাকে সবাই শ্রদ্ধা করে, ছাত্ররা শ্রদ্ধা করে, ওরা এই বার্তা শুনে তারা এই পরিস্থিতি নিয়ন্ত্রণে নিয়ে চলে আসবে এবং আমরা একটা সুন্দর একটা পরিস্থিতির দিকে আমরা এগিয়ে যাব ইনশাআল্লাহ। এখানে আওয়ামী লীগের কেউ ছিল না, আওয়ামী লীগের কেউ ছিল না। হ্যাঁ, আজকে বিকজ আমাদের এই সময় নাই, এটা একটা বিশেষ একটা পরিস্থিতি, আমরা আজকে যে এই পরিস্থিতি এটা একটা আমরা একটা নিয়ন্ত্রণ নিয়ে আসবো। সেনাবাহিনী শান্তি শৃঙ্খলা বজায় রাখার কাজ চালিয়ে যাবে।
The armed forces are continuing to try and ensure that peace is maintained.
দায়িত্ব, ছাত্রদের দায়িত্ব, রাজনৈতিক নেতৃবৃন্দ এবং রাজনৈতিক
It's the responsibility of students as well
দায়িত্ব হচ্ছে সেনাবাহিনীকে সাহায্য করা,
to assist the armed forces.
এবং আপনারা মিডিয়ার মাধ্যমে
And through the media, I'd like to say
একটু আমাদের সাহায্য করেন।
Please help us
সুতরাং আমরা তাহলে এই পরিস্থিতি নিয়ন্ত্রণ সহজে
so that we can bring control to the situation at hand.
না, যদি জিনিসটা শান্ত হয়ে যায় তাহলে আর কারফিউর কোনো প্রয়োজন নাই।
A curfew will not be required if the situation becomes peaceful.
প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো গোলাগুলির প্রয়োজন নাই। আমি আদেশ দিয়ে দিয়েছি সেনাবাহিনী কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না।
The armed forces will not open fire. I have passed an order.
আমি আশা করছি যে আমার এই বক্তব্যের পরে
I assure you that after my statement now,
আমরা একটা সুন্দর পরিবেশের দিকে যাচ্ছি।
we are headed in a good direction, in a beautiful direction.
আমরা এটা না, আমি আজকে রাতের মধ্যে একটা আমরা সলিউশনে যাওয়ার চেষ্টা করব, বাট আমাদের
We are going to try and find a solution by tonight.
এটা আমরা এখনো এটা টু আর্লি, আমরা যাচ্ছি,
It's too early.
আমরা কথা বলবো মহামান্য রাষ্ট্রপতি।
We are going to be talking, we are going to be having discussions.
আমরা পৌঁছাবো। পরিস্থিতি ছিল খুব কম, সময় খুব কম ছিল। আমি যাদেরকে পেয়েছি অনেককেই আমি বলেছি, সবাই হতেন, বাট প্রধান রাজনৈতিক দলের সমস্ত নেতৃস্থানীয় নেতৃবৃন্দরা তাদের সাথে আমি কথা বলেছি এবং ওনারা সবাই আমাদের এই প্রস্তাবে, এই যে আমরা যে আলোচনা করছি, সবাই এটাতে রাজি হয়েছেন। এখানে মমিনুল হক সাহেব ছিলেন, এখানে জামাতের আমির ছিলেন, জুনায়েদ সাকি উনি ছিলেন, তারপরে ডক্টর আসিফ নজরুল ছিলেন।
All right, the Bangladesh Army Chief over there naming all of the political leaders who were called for the meeting, which has just taken place. There's been a decision to form an interim government. Further decisions will be taken in the next couple of hours. The bust over there on the right-hand side of your screen was of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Sheikh Hasina's father, the father of Bangladesh. The fact that they are trying to destroy his statue gives you an idea of the extent of anger in Bangladesh at this stage. Sheikh Hasina has been moved to safety.
যেহেতু ওনাকে
There will be a new government in place.
এবং উনিও একটা সুন্দর একটা ভিডিও মেসেজ উনি দিয়েছেন ছাত্রদের জন্য। আমি আশা করব যে এই ভিডিও মেসেজটাও কাজে ইয়াদ হবে, কাজ দিবে। এইভাবে আমরা কাজ করে দেব। সবাই ভালো থাকেন।
There is a video message which has been sent to students in Bangladesh.
যত প্রশ্ন করতে থাকবেন আমাকে দেরি করাবেন।
The more you ask me, the more you're delaying me.
It's too early. আমরা
It's all too early.
কাজ করতে দেন, একটু সময় দেন।
Give me a little bit of time.
আমরা একটা সলিউশনের মধ্যে আমরা যাব।
We are going to find a solution.
আপনারা সবাই যারা আন্দোলনরত, যারা ছাত্ররা আছেন, আন্দোলনরত যত লোকজন আছেন, দয়া করে ঘরে ফিরে যান।
Everybody please go home.
আল্লাহ আমাদের মঙ্গল করুক। আল্লাহ হাফেজ।
Allah Hafiz.
দর্শক আপনারা
All right, the Bangladesh Army Chief over there addressing the nation, a stunning couple of hours where Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has been moved to safety. A house has been ransacked. A statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Sheikh Hasina's father, also the father of Bangladesh, being defiled over there. Efforts to sort of break it down with using an axe. The Bangladesh Army Chief in a press conference that you just heard right now, and I translated it basically saying that there is an interim government which is being formed in Bangladesh. Repeated appeals to student protesters in Bangladesh to ensure that there is no violence, to go home, to work with the armed forces. Political leaders in Bangladesh have had a meeting with the Bangladesh Army Chief. The Bangladesh Army Chief has told the armed forces not to open fire, but he has also told protesters that they must end the murders, they must end the violence, they must end the destruction, and that there is a beautiful path ahead for Bangladesh, and that he promises people and all of the protesters that all of the problems or the issues they have will be resolved favorably. Let's go back to Zulkarnain Syed Khan. Mr. Khan, you heard as much as I did what was being said. Any takeaways for you? Mr. Khan, can you hear me? All right, let's see if we've got Ayanjit Sen with us. Mr. Sen, you heard what the Bangladesh Army Chief had to say. Could you give us your sense of what you heard?
Well, in all likelihood, Jamaat and BNP together are going to form the next government. which is because at the end of the day, one thing you have to remember that nobody from the erstwhile Awami League came for the meeting, as the army chief mentioned. So from that perspective, if we see that the opposition is going to come back to the government, of course, an interim government is all but sure that the opposition is going to come back to power here in Bangladesh.
There was an important message for Indian citizens as well from the External Affairs Ministry. It's a statement which came yesterday. They are repeating that statement now. Advisory for Bangladesh: in view of the ongoing developments, Indian nationals are strongly advised against travelling to Bangladesh till further notice. All Indian nationals presently in Bangladesh are advised to exercise extreme caution, restrict their movements and remain in contact with the High Commission of India in Dhaka through emergency phone numbers. And a series of numbers have been listed at this stage. But a real crisis which has taken place in Bangladesh. Mr. Sen, did you manage to hear anything in that press conference about Sheikh Hasina and her whereabouts?
Yeah. By the army chief at all, because as one of your experts said before, that she's not being flown into India or even Great Britain, which had apparently or reportedly said no to her presence over there. But it's in all likelihood, if she's fleeing to a foreign country, whichever country that is, if it's Belarus at the end of the day. But one thing is sure that first of all, the Council of Ministers, who are right now in Dhaka, a few of them. I spoke to one of them today morning itself, and the state of the way he spoke. He talked about incidentally, there was one very interesting element which came out 2 days back from the Pakistan High Commission in Dhaka, and it apparently said that in that written note from the Pakistan High Commission, it basically said that the students who are on protesting right now have approached the Pakistan High Commission and have asked for whatever help they can provide, to which the Pakistan High Commission has said that yes, we will provide all kind of help that is required for the protesting students. Now that's an interesting aspect which came up a couple of days back, which was not put out in the media from that perspective, but one of the Council of Ministers who was still there in Dhaka told me a few hours back that the situation is absolutely out of hands right now, and he is actually trying to now flee the country. Because
what I can share with you at this stage as well is there's a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 transport which took off a short while back, right? And we can track it on flight radar. It's flown overhead Kolkata without landing in Kolkata and is headed north at this stage. It's flying at an altitude of about 24,000 feet. It is south of Durgapur at this stage. The C-130 is a transport aircraft. It's a military aircraft. The Bangladesh Air Force operates it. Where is the C-130 headed? We don't know, because I'm going to try and see if my camera person can zoom in to this image that I have on my screen. Can my camera person please zoom in? Hi, can we just zoom in, if possible, to this image on our screen right now? Okay, and let's just cut to an image of this plane. This is on flight radar 24. Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to, yeah, great. So I'm going to show you what this is, flight radar 24. This could be the plane carrying Sheikh Hasina. If it is, then it is a plane which took off from. It is a plane which took off from Bangladesh, from presumably from Dhaka. It flew direct overhead Kolkata, but as you can see, it didn't land in Kolkata. So I'm going to zoom in further over there. It directly crossed Kolkata without landing in Kolkata, right? It's now moving up, and we just follow the blue line that you see on the screen over there. It's south of Durgapur. It is past right now. We'll be looking at this very, very closely. Why would a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 transport with the code name Ajax 1431, that's the call sign, Ajax 1431, why would it be in Indian airspace at all at this stage? It's south of Asansol now. It will be crossing into Bihar at some stage. Flight radar doesn't know where exactly, flight radar doesn't know where it's going to be headed at this stage. So we don't know where it's going to be headed over here, and we don't know the exact time. But I would suggest that the movement of this flight that you see on your screen, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Let's see if we can actually see this a little bit better if I hold it up like this. All right, I don't have it right now. But Ajax 1431 is the name of the aircraft, and I'm just going to try and track it one more time and show it on the map right now. Yeah, it is south of Asansol at this stage, and okay, so I've got a picture of the aircraft as well, and you can also see where exactly it is headed. Now, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, perhaps ex-Prime Minister would be more appropriate at this stage, had boarded this Bangladesh Air Force C-130 aircraft, flew directly over Kolkata, did not land in Kolkata. That I find very, very interesting. Just look at this. The aircraft came down, flew right over Kolkata, didn't land in Kolkata, and is continuing to fly north. Where is it going to head right now? We don't know. It's swinging north at this stage. Why would a Bangladesh Air Force aircraft, actually be there? So at this stage, it's it's called Ajax 1431. That's all I know about the aircraft at this stage. But we're going to track it very closely. The assumption is that the Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina might actually be on that aircraft. On your left is a Mi-8 or Mi-17 helicopter of the Bangladesh Air Force, which she boarded to get out of her official residence, which was ransacked with hundreds of protesters entering. All right, let me just go back to my colleague Vishal, who's been tracking this minute by minute. Vishal, what are some of the other leads that you're picking up?
So right now, just a few moments ago, the Armed Forces Chief addressed a press conference. It was awaited for about an hour. He said that he had discussions with the people who have been protesting for days, and the students have conveyed him the message that they will, they will stop in some ways these protests, these violent protests. However, he's still appealing to the protesters that they need to maintain, peace in the country, because it's been weeks of violence which has killed dozens of people. Probably more than 300 people have been killed in the last 3 weeks. The violence had erupted back in July, mid-July, when protesters had demanded that the quotas should be scaled back, and they had some kind of relief by the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, who had stepped in and said that the quota will be scaled back from about 40% to 5%. However, the protests continued, and just in within 2 days of the fresh phase of protest, the PM of Bangladesh had to resign. There had been calls for her to resign. That's how the fresh wave of protests has started. Thousands of protests across the country, especially in Dhaka, they had been demanding that Sheikh Hasina has to resign. It was widely unexpected that she will resign so soon. It's been just 24 hours since the fresh wave of protest started. It killed about 100 odd people within the space of 24 hours, and within that time frame only, the PM of Bangladesh has resigned. Mind you, this is a PM that had ruled the country with an iron fist for about more than a decade, about 3 consecutive terms, thousands of disappearances of the opposition leaders. All of that will come into picture when the new government comes in. As we've been reporting, the army has stepped in and said that it will form the interim government. Whether or not it will pass the baton to the opposition or continue to have this military rule, that remains to be seen. So all of that will have to be answered in the next few days or the months.
All right, I'm just going to go across to Mr. Khan, who's back with us. Mr. Khan, there is a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 Hercules aircraft, which is winging it across North India at this stage, North Bihar presently. Presumably, that's the aircraft with Sheikh Hasina on board. It flew right over Kolkata, didn't land over there. Do you have any information of where this aircraft is going, presumably with her on board?
Who's the person?
Mr. Khan, can you hear me?
Yeah, Daro. Hello?
Yeah, Mr. Khan, Vishnu here. I'm just trying to understand. There's a Bangladesh Air Force C-130 Hercules aircraft, which is now
Yes.
flying over Bihar. Presumably, it's got her in it. The timing of the takeoff is exactly coinciding with the crisis that we are seeing. It flew over Kolkata,
Yeah.
didn't land over there. Do we know where she's
Yeah.
headed? Assuming that she's on board that aircraft.
I have been told that she's on board that aircraft. Yes, she's on board that aircraft, and the aircraft basically she was not getting approval from the Indian authorities to fly through even, but I think they have secured the flight permission, and now they're flying through India. But I am not sure to which country she is heading to. Like, I have been told that she tried to land in India, but Indian authority did not accept it, considering the recent atrocities that took place in Dhaka. So nearly 500 people confirmed died, and there are many hundreds remain unaccounted for. Thousands people have lost their limbs, around 800 eye injuries. So they don't want to
Sure.
get into a diplomatic trouble with Bangladesh. So
I would.
think that is
It
what
still needs to be
they
seen
did.
whether this aircraft does land in Delhi or in any other Indian airbase, because there's only so we don't. The aircraft will ultimately need to refuel as well, even if it's headed elsewhere. We're going to take a short break. There's a lot more coming up. NDTV continues to track and break every aspect of this story. The crisis in Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister, has escaped Bangladesh, flying in an aircraft over India right now. We'll continue to look at this very, very closely. Come back with the very latest.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
After great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
ਉਹਦੀ ਪਰਫਾਰਮੈਂਸ ਆਈ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਮਿਲੇ.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Welcome, you're watching our rolling coverage of the latest that's happening in Bangladesh. I'm Gauri Dwivedi, and those of our viewers tuning in right now. As things stand right now, the Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has flown out of the country. There is flux right now with the next couple of hours, even as the army chief has asked for all protesters to go back to their houses. Let's take a look at the headlines coming in at this hour. Army coup in Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina flies out of country. Sheikh Hasina has been ousted. She's flown out of the country amidst unprecedented protests. Army has taken over and announced an interim government to be formed, even as Army chief addressed the nation and called for peace amongst the protesters. Army mob storms into Bangladesh Prime Minister's residence. Protesters vandalize Mujibur Rahman's statue, Dhaka Palace, ransacked by protesters. Where is Sheikh Hasina headed? The flight radar suggests that the Bangladesh C-130J was spotted over Kolkata as the Sheikh Hasina is expected to land in Delhi anytime soon now. Aircraft carrying Sheikh Hasina has been in Indian airspace for 40 minutes. Bangladesh is on the boil right now. At least 98 people have been killed. In fact, hundreds have been injured, and that number could just be increasing because there is turmoil on the streets of Dhaka. Across Bangladesh, police use tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse tens of thousands who've been demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Hasina, and they've got it. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned. She's now former Prime Minister of Bangladesh. She won a historic mandate earlier this year, in a mandate that was marred by a lot of opposition and in fact boycott by the main opposition party. But what happens next in Bangladesh? It's had a history of civil unrest. 100 people, as I said, have already been killed. Since 16th of July, Bangladesh has been on the boil over quota, and quota protests took over the entire country. The clashes broke out even as Supreme Court last week came in favor of the quota protesters, slashed the amount from 30% to just 5%, but that did little to address the nationwide protests that were spiraling out of hand. There's been an indefinite countrywide curfew that has been slashed, and mobile internet continues to be under very tight restrictions. But first up, listen in to what the army chief had to say when he asked and appealed for calm and asked all lakhs of protesters to go back to their houses, and said that there will be an interim government even as the next few weeks could mean flux for Bangladesh. Listen in.
ক্রান্তিকাল চলছে। আমি সমস্ত রাজনৈতিক দলের নেতৃবৃন্দকে এখানে আমন্ত্রণ করেছিলাম। ওনারা এখানে এসেছেন। আমরা একটা সুন্দর আলোচনা করেছি। সেখানে আমরা সিদ্ধান্ত নিয়েছি যে একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট আমরা ফর্ম করব এবং ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্টের মাধ্যমে এদেশের সমস্ত কার্যকলাপ চলবে। আমরা এখন মহামান্য রাষ্ট্রপতির কাছে যাব যে এই ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্মের ব্যাপারে ওনার সাথে আলোচনা করে আমরা একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে দেশ পরিচালনা করব। আমি আপনাদের কথা দিচ্ছি, সমস্ত হত্যা, সমস্ত অন্যায়ের বিচার আমরা করব। আপনারা সেনাবাহিনীর প্রতি আস্থা রাখেন, সশস্ত্র বাহিনীর প্রতি আস্থা রাখেন। আমি সমস্ত দায়িত্ব নিচ্ছি। আপনাদের জানমাল এবং আপনাদেরকে আমি কথা দিচ্ছি যে আপনারা আশাহত হবেন না। ইনশাআল্লাহ আপনাদের যত দাবি আছে সেই দাবিগুলো আমরা পূরণ করব এবং দেশে একটা শান্তি শৃঙ্খলা ফিরিয়ে নিয়ে আসব। আপনারা আমার সাথে সহযোগিতা করেন। দয়া করে আর এই ভাঙচুর, হত্যা, মারামারি, সংঘর্ষ এগুলো থেকে বিরত হন। আমি নিশ্চিত যে আপনারা যদি আমার কথা মতো চলেন, আমাদের সাথে যদি একসাথে যদি কাজ করি আমরা, নিঃসন্দেহে আমরা একটা সুন্দর পরিণতির দিকে আমরা অগ্রসর হতে পারব। আপনারা দয়া করে আমাকে সাহায্য করেন। মারামারি করে এই সংঘাতের মাধ্যমে আমরা আর কিছু অ্যাচিভ করতে পারবো না, আর কিছু আমরা পাবো না। সুতরাং দয়া করে আপনারা সমস্ত ধ্বংসযজ্ঞ, সমস্ত অরাজকতা, সমস্ত সংঘর্ষ থেকে বিরত হন এবং ইনশাআল্লাহ আমরা সবাই মিলে একটা সুন্দর ভবিষ্যতের দিকে আমরা অগ্রসর হব। প্রতিটা হত্যার বিচার করা হবে, প্রতিটা অন্যায়ের বিচার হবে। আমরা আজকে সুন্দরভাবে কথা বলেছি। সমস্ত দলের প্রধান দলের নেতারা এখানে উপস্থিত ছিলেন। আমি ওনাদের ইনভাইট করেছিলাম এখানে। ওনারা ভেরি নাইস অফ দেম যে ওনারা এসেছেন, অ্যান্ড আমরা একটা সুন্দর আলোচনা করেছি এবং এই আলোচনাটা ফলপ্রসূ হবে বলে আমি মনে করছি এবং আমরা একটা সুন্দর একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে আমরা দেশ পরিচালনা করব। মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী পদত্যাগ করেছেন এবং এখন একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে আমরা আমাদের কার্যক্রম পরিচালনা করব। আপনারা একটু ধৈর্য ধরেন, আমাদের কিছু সময় দেন। ইনশাআল্লাহ আমরা সবাই মিলে সমস্ত সমস্যার সমাধান করতে সক্ষম হব। আপনারা আর এই সংঘাতের পথে যাবেন না এবং শান্তি শৃঙ্খলার পথে ফেরত চলে আসেন। আমাদের দেশের অনেক ক্ষতি হচ্ছে, অর্থ সম্পদের ক্ষতি হচ্ছে, জানের লোকজন মারা যাচ্ছে। তো এগুলো থেকে আপনারা বিরত হন এবং আমাদের সাহায্য করেন। আমি সমস্ত দায়িত্ব নিচ্ছি, আপনারা আমাকে সাহায্য করেন। সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ। আল্লাহ হাফেজ।
দর্শক আপনারা নিশ্চয়ই সেই কাঙ্ক্ষিত ভাষণ দেখেছেন। সেনাপ্রধান আরো কিছু বলার চেষ্টা করছেন, আমরা আবারও শুনি।
এটা খুব আর্লি স্টেজ। আমরা যাব মহামান্য রাষ্ট্রপতির সাথে যে আলাপ আলোচনার মাধ্যমে এটা আমরা করব। আজকে এখানে জামাতের আমির ছিলেন, আমাদের বিএনপির শীর্ষস্থানীয় নেতৃবৃন্দ এখানে ছিলেন, জাতীয় পার্টির নেতৃস্থানীয় নেতৃবৃন্দ এখানে ছিলেন, এবং সুশীল সমাজ, এবং এখানে ডক্টর আসিফ নজরুল উনি নিজেও ছিলেন এখানে, এবং উনি আমার সামনেই উনি সমস্ত ছাত্রদেরকে একটা সুন্দর বার্তাও দিয়েছেন। এবং আমি আশা করি যে ছাত্ররা সেই বার্তা শুনে ওরা কথা ওনাকে সবাই শ্রদ্ধা করে, ছাত্ররা শ্রদ্ধা করে, ওনার এই বার্তা শুনে তারা এই পরিস্থিতি নিয়ন্ত্রণে নিয়ে চলে আসবে এবং আমরা একটা সুন্দর একটা পরিস্থিতির দিকে আমরা এগিয়ে যাব ইনশাআল্লাহ। এখানে আওয়ামী লীগের কেউ ছিল না, আওয়ামী লীগের কেউ ছিল না। হ্যাঁ, আজকে বিকজ আমাদের এই সময় নাই, এটা একটা বিশেষ একটা পরিস্থিতি। আমরা আজকে যে এই পরিস্থিতি এটা একটা আমরা একটা নিয়ন্ত্রণ নিয়ে আসবো। সেনাবাহিনী শান্তি শৃঙ্খলা বজায় রাখার কাজ চালিয়ে যাবে এবং আপনাদের সবার দায়িত্ব, ছাত্রদের দায়িত্ব, রাজনৈতিক নেতৃবৃন্দ এবং রাজনৈতিক কর্মীদের দায়িত্ব হচ্ছে সেনাবাহিনীকে সাহায্য করা। এবং আপনারা মিডিয়ার মাধ্যমে আমাদেরকে এই যে একটু আমাদের সাহায্য করেন, সুতরাং আমরা তাহলে এই পরিস্থিতি নিয়ন্ত্রণ সহজেই নিয়ে আসতে পারব। না, যদি জিনিসটা শান্ত হয়ে যায় তাহলে আর কারফিউর কোনো প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো জরুরি অবস্থার প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো কারফিউর প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো গোলাগুলির প্রয়োজন নাই। আমি আদেশ দিয়ে দিয়েছি সেনাবাহিনী কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না, পুলিশ কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না। আমি আশা করছি যে আমার এই বক্তব্যের পরে পরিস্থিতি উন্নতি হবে, আমরা একটা সুন্দর পরিবেশের দিকে যাচ্ছি। আমরা এটা না, আমি আজকে রাতের মধ্যে একটা আমরা সলিউশনে যাওয়ার চেষ্টা করবো, বাট আমাদের হয়তো 2-1 দিন সময় দিতে হবে। এটা আমরা এখনো এটা টু আর্লি, আমরা যাচ্ছি যে আমরা কথা বলবো মহামান্য রাষ্ট্রপতির সাথে, আমরা একটা সুন্দর সলিউশনে আমরা পৌঁছাবো। পরিস্থিতি ছিল খুব কম, সময় খুব কম ছিল। আমি যাদেরকে পেয়েছি অনেককেই আমি বলেছি, সবাই হতেন, বাট প্রধান রাজনৈতিক দলের সমস্ত নেতৃস্থানীয় নেতৃবৃন্দ তাদের সাথে আমি কথা বলেছি এবং ওনারা সবাই আমাদের এই প্রস্তাবে, এই যে আমরা যে আলোচনা করছি, সবাই এটাতে রাজি হয়েছেন। এখানে মমিনুল হক সাহেব ছিলেন, এখানে জামাতের আমির ছিলেন, জুনায়েদ সাকি উনি ছিলেন, তারপরে ডক্টর আসিফ নজরুল ছিলেন। আমরা সবাই মিলে এবং সবাই আমরা এটাতে একমত পোষণ করেছি। এখন ছাত্রদের কাজ হচ্ছে যে শান্ত হওয়া এবং আমাদেরকে সাহায্য করা। আমি তো বলছি এতক্ষণ আমার এই বক্তব্যের ছাত্রদের প্রতিনিধি বলতে আমি এখন ওনাদের কাউকে পাইনি। আমি ডক্টর আসিফ নজরুলকে রিকোয়েস্ট করেছি, যেহেতু ওনাকে ছাত্ররা শ্রদ্ধা করেন এবং উনিও একটা সুন্দর একটা ভিডিও মেসেজ উনি দিয়েছেন ছাত্রদের জন্য। আমি আশা করব যে এই ভিডিও মেসেজটাও কাজে ইয়াদ হবে, কাজ দিবে। এইভাবে আমরা কাজ করে দেব। সবাই ভালো থাকেন, সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ। এখানে আপনারা যত প্রশ্ন করতে থাকবেন আমাকে দেরি করাবেন। ইট ইজ টু আর্লি। আমরা কাজ করছি, আমাদের একটু কাজ করতে দেন, একটু সময় দেন। আমরা একটা সলিউশনের মধ্যে আমরা যাব ইনশাআল্লাহ। হ্যাঁ, আপনারা সবাই যারা আন্দোলনরত যারা ছাত্ররা আছেন, আন্দোলনরত যত লোকজন আছেন, দয়া করে ঘরে ফিরে যান। সবাই ভালো থাকেন, আল্লাহ আমাদের মঙ্গল করুক। আল্লাহ হাফেজ।
Okay, that was Bangladesh Army Chief making a pitch, making an appeal for calm and for protesters to stop the violence, stop the vandalism. On your screen, some of them are the visuals that you see, some of them are deferred visuals, but you can see that on your screen that vandalism and violence is what protesters have been resorting to, and we'll keep getting fresh visuals of that story. Even as Sheikh Hasina has fled, she is no more in the country, she is no more in Bangladesh, the army has taken over, there's an interim government that will be put in place, but when that happens remains to be seen. As of now, there is a constitutional crisis in Bangladesh because the president is expected to take over. There's no army coup. Let me just tell this to our viewers. There's no army coup. There's no effort by the army to take power forcibly, but it is now in charge till an interim government comes in. Okay, let's get in my colleagues to get all the angles to this developing story, which has huge implications for India. Even as, let's first get in Mohammad Ghazali, Vishal Vivek, as well as Vasudha Venugopal to tell us the different angles to this big story that we are tracking. But first up, Ghazali, let me ask you this, the immediate, before we come to the big picture in terms of the impact this has for India, the big picture, she's supposed to, Sheikh Hasina's fighter jet is supposed to land in India very shortly. What are the next steps? What are the kind of diplomatic protocol that she will be extended to? Whom could she meet? Most important, refueling stop before she goes further. What's it? Talk to us about the next immediate steps, given that she is going to be in Indian territory very shortly.
See, as far as the diplomatic processes is concerned, India is walking a very tight rope here because they don't want to be seen as somebody who is helping Sheikh Hasina while the situation is on the boil in Bangladesh. The BSF DG has rushed to Kolkata to ensure that the borders remain quite calm. And that is why what is expected when Sheikh Hasina lands here in Delhi, that perhaps for a short while she will stay for refueling. And what we are picking up is that she will be flying to London because she has got her niece who is a parliamentarian there. So it is very likely that her stay in India will not be longer than usual because many diplomatic experts or the old Bangladesh watchers are saying that India will have to trade very cautiously in a situation like this where an interim government is still not in place. The army chief has hinted of interim government formation, and they're also in touch with the academicians in Bangladesh. And one name which has come up in Bangladesh is Professor Salimullah, who is a professor of fine arts there, and he may be heading the government. But just to tell our viewers, the government is not in place right now. It's still under the army control. The interim government formation has not happened, and the army is still discussing with different political parties. So as far as her stay in India is concerned, even if it is going to be there, it will be very short, for very short duration. And as you mentioned, it may be just for the refueling before she departs for London.
Absolutely, it could be a quick refueling stop. But again, what is the kind of diplomatic protocol that India will extend to former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina? Who could she be meeting at the airport? How long could this stay be? Could really give an indication of how India is viewing this entire crisis in Bangladesh. Stay with me, Ghazali. I'm also getting Vasudha, but before that, Vishal, let me ask you this, that in terms of the turmoil that is happening in Bangladesh right now, Army Chief's appeal for ensuring calm, for protesters to stop the vandalism is having absolutely no impact. The latest visuals that I was seeing, which we'll get for our viewers also in a short bit, is that the museum has also been set on fire by protesters.
That is correct. So this has been going on for at least 2 weeks now. Lakhs of protesters have been on the streets for more than 15 days now. So it would take some time to contain these emotions. They had been on a rampage for about 2 weeks. There had been repeated clashes between police and the protesters, which had resulted in deaths of at least 300 people over the last 15 to 20 days. It will take some time. It has been a couple of hours since the army chief addressed the media and asked the protesters to calm down and extended a hand that they will form a government, an interim government that they will probably make with the BNP, which is the main opposition party in Bangladesh right now. So what this means for India is also one of the main questions, because in the past when BNP had been in the power, it had been a tough ride for India as far as the anti-terror operations are concerned on the border of India and Bangladesh. India had faced a lot of troubles on the border due to BNP being in the power. And ever since BNP's ouster, Sheikh Hasina had stepped in and extended a friend's hand to India and said that the government will support India in any ways possible to contain the terror operations across the border, and they had been successful in many ways. So that is the main key point for India, and how this new government, how it adopts, how it adapts, that remains to be seen. Whether the Islamic fundamentalism will come back, that remains to be seen.
That's a concern, that's a fear, but I'm going to come to that in just a bit because I want to first address the immediate. Vasudha, I'm going to come to you, but I want to address the latest visuals. Let's take them full frame. There you can see that's the latest visuals coming in of the museum being set on fire by the protesters. As I said, the appeal for calm having zero impact on the protesters. Some reports suggested that over 4 lakh protesters were on the streets today in Dhaka, despite the fact that their number one demand. Sheikh Hasina has left Bangladesh. The country, though, remains on the boil because protesters refuse to go back, refuse to withdraw, even though their biggest demand has been met. Those are the latest visuals coming in of the museum being vandalized, in fact being burnt by protesters, even as the army continues to ask for the calm to prevail, for protesters to go back. In fact, earlier we had visuals of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Bangladesh. His statue was also vandalized. Okay, I'm going to come to Vasudha in just a bit, but I want to now get in the India angle. Ghazali, now this is very important and very significant for India from 2 aspects. One is the fact that who comes next, as to who will now take over, whose government could be formed, and who would be the interim prime minister, because remember, you can only be the prime minister if you're there in parliament. The primary opposition party, that was BNP, boycotted the elections completely. So there cannot be any representative from Khalida Zia's party. So who could take over in the interim before the elections are announced? Because this turmoil cannot go on for any time longer than absolutely necessary.
See, first that India has lost its trusted aid in Bangladesh. We know that how Sheikh Hasina was here in the swearing ceremony, and she was one of the first international leaders to visit India or meet Prime Minister Modi after he took over for his 3rd term here. So one, that we have lost a trusted partner. Second, the bigger concern for India is that right now the region, our neighborhood, immediate neighborhood is in turmoil. There is instability, and all depends upon the army chief, because he made those announcements. He facilitated a departure of Sheikh Hasina from Bangladesh while the entire country was on the boil. He ensured that she's safely leaving the country, departing the country with her sister. So all depends upon who he appoints as somebody to take charge for the new government. The third thing is that India will also be concerned that not any party which has even a remotest hint of being and having a history of anti-India sentiments or harnessing
Ghazali, I'm going to come back to that aspect because that requires greater discussion in terms of what happens if Khalida Zia or some of the other elements come to power. But I want to get in Vasudha first. She's standing outside Bangladesh High Commission. Vasudha, how India now deals with the present and immediate is very significant. How long Sheikh Hasina stays in Delhi, what is the kind of diplomatic protocol that is extended to her will be very significant and important. Talk to us, what are your sources telling you about this?
Well, Gauri, I'm coming to you from the Bangladesh High Commission, and the action here has really intensified in the last few hours. When I came here in the afternoon, there were hardly like a few policemen, but now if you look at the security here, it's been beefed up. There are barricades everywhere, and there are staff members inside this complex who are also wearing those black badges of protest, signaling that they also support what really happened in Bangladesh. And remember, what happened in Bangladesh was something that was sort of a deja vu, because we've seen something like this happening in Sri Lanka and of course in Afghanistan and Myanmar. So India's neighborhood has been in a state of unrest, and clearly, these protests in Sri Lanka started on July 1st, and we've seen that intensify over the last few days, with the army in some ways also supporting it, and India has been very concerned about it, considering Jamaat-e-Islami's youth wing has also been supporting the protests. So MEA has officially reacted to this in the past few days, saying that it is monitoring the situation. In fact, just yesterday, India released a very important stern advisory to citizens, signaling them, cautioning them, against any travel in Bangladesh, and making it very clear that they also need to be in touch with the Bangladesh High Commission there. So for India, Bangladesh is very critical, because, it is also important, a pivotal country for its Look East policy, considering that India also wants to stall China's advance and influence in this particular region. And when it comes to Narendra Modi and Sheikh Hasina's relationship, Gauri, you know this better than anybody else. It has been like a Sonali Adhyay, like it's been a golden era of diplomacy for both countries, because, be it bilateral relations, or for that matter trade, infrastructure, port connectivity, or for that matter, even cultural relations. We've seen that grow in the last 10 years. But apart from that, there have also been concerns raised with the allegedly anti-democratic nature of the elections that took place in January, which also put Sheikh Hasina back in power, for the fourth term. She's been at the helm of Bangladesh since 2009, but she's been a trusted ally of India. Khaleda Zia, the opponent, has been extremely critical of Sheikh Hasina and Narendra Modi friendship. So clearly a lot of reworking of foreign ties will have to be done, which is what our MEA officials are sort of involved in. But as of now, we know that she has sort of left from Bangladesh, and she is somewhere, she's expected to go to an undisclosed location. It could be London, she could be actually coming to Delhi and going off to London, but there is no clarity, there is no official statement on what kind of diplomatic treatment that she could get from India, because this is one area where India would be extremely careful, and there would be a lot of thought put into this, and that is one thing that India would be very careful about. And remember that she has been to India for at least 10 times in the last 10 years, and she was here just on the 24th of June, and also for the swearing in of the Prime Minister for the third time. So there are many friendly ties at stake. At the same time, for India to put on that objective, neutral face to ensure that its own interest is at the helm of it will be very critical.
Absolutely. In fact, Vasudha, I was coming to just that. The personal camaraderie, the personal equation that Prime Minister Modi shares with Sheikh Hasina, it's only grown in the last decade or so. And in fact, India was one of the few countries that was rock solidly behind Sheikh Hasina's re-election earlier this year. Talk to us about how the dynamics now gets changed, and what is it that is now the thinking in the security establishment given these developments that are coming in?
Well, Gauri, as we know that Sheikh Hasina has been a trusted ally of, of India, and also particularly of Narendra Modi, when it came to addressing India's concerns about, Islamic terrorism, Islamic extremism. She has been somebody who has addressed those concerns, and that has also been a point of contention between Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia. So clearly Sheikh Hasina and Narendra Modi have also started many projects between Bangladesh and India, strengthening the bilateral ties, and when it comes to port connectivity, infrastructure, this whole railway station in Agartala, and also Indo-Bangla movie making, the kind of shared heritage that we have with respect to Rabindranath Tagore, or celebrating the legacy of Mujibur Rahman. All these things did happen in the last 10 years, which is why this friendship was considered, this whole age was considered Sonali Adhyay, or the golden era of diplomacy between India and Bangladesh, because it did reach the peak of, diplomacy. But other than that, there have been concerns with regard to Sheikh Hasina's high-handedness, these whole allegations against her rigging these elections, and also most importantly the alleged high-handedness and also the anti-democratic nature of these polls that also saw her becoming the Prime Minister of Bangladesh for for the fourth time, and the way she dealt with opponents. So India has been very careful about this. She was also one of the leaders who was invited for Narendra Modi's swearing in, and she was, amongst the first foreign foreign dignitaries to visit Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he took over for the third time. So clearly many, friendly ties up there. But at the same time, India has, under Jaishankar and under Dr. Jaishankar and under Narendra Modi, has always put its own interests first. It has actually devised a new Look East policy where it looks at its own interest and also in some ways stalling the influence of China in this region, which is why I think it will be very mindful about the changing dynamics in the country, and it will look for a strategy which will put the national interest at the helm of it.
Absolutely. Stay with us, Vasudha. I want to also now bring in Major General Gigi Dwivedi joining us live on the broadcast for the security implications of what's happening in Bangladesh. General Dwivedi, now this has huge security implications for India. The long border that we have with Bangladesh, it's been porous, it is porous. The fact that in the northeast in the past, especially when it was not Sheikh Hasina's tenure, there have been very heightened security risks. How do you see the present security challenges that emanate from the situation right now?
Well, Gauri, first and foremost, at the outset, it's very unfortunate as to what has taken place in Bangladesh from the political perspective. And I fought the Bangladesh war, and therefore I hold the interest of Bangladesh very dear. So coming to the specific point of Indian security, Bangladesh is very important for India from the security perspective, both from the external and internal security dimension. First, let's take the internal security, because when the government in Bangladesh, which was non-Awami League government, especially the Bangladesh and National Party, the territory of Bangladesh was being used by those elements which are inimical to India's interest, and especially Jamaati elements. And ISI had actually made deep inroads into Bangladesh, and therefore we found that our security interests were jeopardized, and a lot of anti-India elements were operating there, which was absolutely injurious to our interest. Secondly, if you take the external dimension, Chinese had made very deep inroads into Bangladesh, especially, Madam Zia's government was very pro-Chinese. And that again is a very serious concern, because as you know, the Chinese have adversarial attitude toward India, aggressive attitude, and what is happening in eastern Ladakh and on the line of actual control. So taking both these things in perspective, I think the development now is not in India's interest, and India will have to be very, very careful and very conscious of how our security interests can be jeopardized both from the internal and the external dimension. Gauri.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm just going to read out some of the latest infrastructure projects that China has had in Bangladesh. There are 7 railway projects, 12 highways, 21 bridges, and 31 power stations. So China is a big concern because it's now a big influence in Bangladesh. Now, the other aspect I want to ask you, General Dwivedi, is the fact that the northeast corridor, there are serious security implications. How do you now view those? Do they get heightened in the immediate?
Absolutely, Gauri, because Siliguri corridor is very, very sensitive to us, because it's a very narrow neck which connects mainland India with the northeast. And that has come into focus because Doklam happened there, and Chinese have been very active after Doklam in 2017. They have upgraded the infrastructure, and they are also pushing Bhutan to have an agreement which will give them actually tactical and strategic advantage here. Second point is, you see, Bangladesh, if we have favorable relations, and that's exactly what was during the Sheikh Hasina government, we had made number of connecting corridors, like Dhaka corridor was there, connecting Agartala. Then from Chittagong, we also were connecting to sit with the projects were there. So the point is that Bangladesh is very critical for us, both from the connectivity point of view and also to keep the China's influence on the foreign. And Chinese have made deep inroads in Myanmar. They have got the, China-Myanmar economic corridor, and that is coming right into the Bay of Bengal. So I think that overall, this situation is not to India's interest, and it's going to set back the progress we have made, especially with the connectivity, also with the anti-India elements that are operating there. Sheikh Hasina government has gone an extra mile to ensure that India's security interests are well taken care of, and and more so, especially from the strategic perspective, tactical perspective, and also from the economic perspective.
General Dwivedi, I'm going to come to some of those aspects. I need to take a very short break. What happens going forward? Bangladesh-China cooperation, Pakistan-Bangladesh cooperation, will that increase? The security implications for India. We come back with also the immediate focus. What happens in the next 24 to 48 hours? I request all my colleagues to stay with us. Rolling coverage of the Bangladesh turmoil continues. We come back after this very short break.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
From the official residence, just perhaps, maybe not even an hour before it was stormed. And then, of course, that, that aircraft flying out of Kurmitala and heading to India. But obviously, the focus is now on that interim government. There are meetings on, high-level meetings on in Dhaka. The army chief is expecting to put an interim government in place. Of course, the army is going to play a major role in all of this, but that interim government is something that's the need of the hour. Every minute without a government in Dhaka is actually prolonging the chaos that prevails on the streets of Dhaka and Bangladesh.
Absolutely, Saurabh. There is chaos and chaos everywhere, but this interim government, how soon it's formed, is really going to be the key focus area for India as well. Vasudha, let me bring you in on that. That's exactly what India would also be now keeping a very close watch on. Who will lead this interim government? How long will it stay? When will the elections happen in Bangladesh? This political uncertainty, how long will it go on, is going to be now India's top focus as well.
Absolutely, Gauri. And let me tell you, when I came to this Bangladesh High Commission just a few hours ago, I was talking to some staff members there, and all of them had these black badges of protest. And while most of them did not want to talk about it, at least one or two did say that their sympathies are with the student protesters. So clearly the protests that started on the 1st of July in Bangladesh, that have rocked the country to an extent that its Prime Minister, a Prime Minister who has been at the helm of this country since 2009, had to resign and flee from the country. So many of them are actually in support of that. That actually reflects the situation in the country, and it also shows that there could be far-reaching circumstances of what has happened in Bangladesh, not just in India but also in the entire neighborhood. What we hear now is that Sheikh Hasina has already landed in the Hindon air base, which is in Loni district of Ghaziabad, and this is also, I remember, one of those airstrips where a lot of people who were fleeing from Afghanistan used to sort of land in. I'm told that no diplomatic protocol was awarded to her because she no longer is the head of the state, or for that matter, so for instance, there are diplomatic protocols that the MEA sort of puts in place, and because she's not a head of a state, that she was not accorded one. But clearly there is a possibility that she could be recording a video statement. She could be releasing that soon. Local media has reported that, Bangladeshi local media has reported that she was not even allowed to record that media because people had barged into the Ganabhaban, which is the official residence of the Prime Minister, and she had to flee from there, from Dhaka, along with her sister. So clearly, this is a difficult time for Bangladesh. India is keeping a close watch on this. Yes. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of the country, and Sheikh Hasina have been trusted allies, but Bangladesh is a pivotal country for India when it comes to checking the influence of China, and India is sure that it will put its own interest ahead of everything else. So that is why, when it comes to border issues, this is also the time that India will sort of, put in measures, proactive measures to ensure that India will not have to face the brunt of the tragedy that is unraveling in Bangladesh.
Stay with us, Vasudha. That's a very important update that you've given, that no diplomatic protocol was extended to Sheikh Hasina because she's no longer the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Former Ambassador Basmati Mukherjee joins us on the broadcast, and along with Brahma Chilani, Strategic Affairs expert. Thanks much for speaking to me on this developing, unprecedented story that's unfolding in our neighborhood. Ma'am, to you first, Ambassador Mukherjee, the fact is that as things stand right now, there is a great security risk that India is staring at, a political flux and a vacuum that Bangladesh is itself now engulfed in. What should be the immediate focus areas that India should now prioritize towards ensuring or bringing in some semblance of normalcy?
Well, first of all, I think the most important thing is to secure our citizens who are in Bangladesh, our High Commission, our diplomats, and also to think about the fate of the minorities in Bangladesh, the Hindus who are there, Bangladeshi citizens. I hope and pray that the mob will not turn on them. They were 26% when Bangladesh became independent. Today they are less than 5%. These are matters which would inflame public opinion in India. We would need to secure our borders to ensure that there is no refugee exodus in an uncontrolled manner. We would need to wait and watch and see what kind of interim government is being formed, what are the sympathies of that government, whether the army is going to be actually forming a civilian government or is going to first take charge. But in my perspective, watching what you're showing on the screen and earlier on social media, it would appear to me that the first thing that the army needs to do in Bangladesh is to establish rule of law and to make the mob go back home. Unless that is done, Bangladesh is in turmoil and is unraveling. So the first need of the hour, which is an internal matter of Bangladesh, it's not for India to comment on it, is to establish rule of law and law and order in Bangladesh. Once that is done, as far as India is concerned, we are the closest, one of the closest neighbors. We have actually helped to liberate Bangladesh. Mujibur Rahman is the founding father of Bangladesh. Very painful to see his statue being desecrated. But this is foreign policy. Situations change in neighboring countries. We need to wait and watch and see what kind of government is formed, and that government should be formed as soon as possible so that law and order can be brought back. It seems to me to be very strange that so much of turmoil and chaos could happen within 24 hours, particularly because the Supreme Court of Bangladesh had already rolled back the original issue which had caused conflict, which was the reservation issue, which had been accepted by the government. And at that point of time, it had seemed as if the protests would die down. Therefore, it would appear to me that these protests actually are very political in nature, and we would need to see whether they would also take an anti-India direction.
Yes.
In that case, it would be of great concern to India. It would be of great concern for the safety of our citizens who are there, of the students who remain, and of course, of the minorities, the Bengali Hindus who had stayed back in Bangladesh when it became independent. I come, by the way, from Bangladesh myself, from Dhaka. My parents come from Dhaka, and the security of the Hindus holding Bangladeshi passports would be on our mind definitely as we watch the chaos unraveling on the streets of Dhaka.
Okay. Mr. Chilani, to you, I want to ask that, some of the questions and some of the very important aspects that Ambassador Mukherjee also raised, which is that how political are these protests in nature? Are they being instigated throughout this year? In fact, the whole of 2024, ever since elections results came out, Sheikh Hasina cried hoarse that there was foreign hand in instigating these protests, and also talking about the election results in a certain manner, colored the verdict that came in. How do you see these protests, and whether or not there's actually a foreign element in terms of instigating these protests and its India impact?
That's an important question. What we know is that the Biden administration began targeting Hasina's government last year in the run-up to the national elections in Bangladesh. And the Biden administration even threatened to impose sanctions on key officials of the Hasina government. And when Hasina went to Washington last year to attend World Bank meetings, not a single official of the Biden administration met with her. And then more recently, we have seen signs of China being angered by Hasina's decision to award the multi-billion-dollar Teesta project to India. China had been ready to execute that project, but Prime Minister Modi persuaded Sheikh Hasina to award that project to India because that project is coming up near India's chicken neck, and India did not want the presence of Chinese technicians and other workers in that sensitive area. So we know that powerful external forces were aligned against Sheikh Hasina, that it would take just 48 hours for a government to fall and fall so dramatically, with the army chief, not Sheikh Hasina, making the announcement of a departure, is very striking. It has, shocked many people, including me, that her government would fall so suddenly, so abruptly. And yet, I think for India, the developments in Bangladesh are of direct concern because whatever happens in Bangladesh directly impinges on India. India surrounds Bangladesh on three sides, and on one side is the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh has a very narrow corridor with Myanmar. So developments in Bangladesh do hold direct implications for India. And also, as Ambassador Mukherjee pointed out, that the forces that were behind these protests are not exactly forces that are friendly to India. These forces that were either spearheading the protests or backing the protests, these elements included the Jamaat Islami, the BNP, which traditionally have been very anti-India, and we do not know what kind of new government will take office in Dhaka, whether the Awami League will have any role to play in the new government, whether these anti-India elements will gain some sway in the new government. All this has a bearing on India's security.
Indeed, indeed. And let me get that to Ambassador Mukherjee before I slip into a break, ma'am, which is that forces that may be or are inimical to India could play a very important political role going forward in Bangladesh. What should be our priorities in securing our strategic calculus?
The first and most important thing as a large neighbor and as a Bengali, I can tell you, is there's one thing that is similar in both parts of Bengal, West Bengal and Bangladesh, which is that Bengalis are hypersensitive about what they perceive as interference in their internal affairs. So it would be wise and prudent to do what we are doing, which is maintaining a diplomatic silence and allowing events to run their course while we watch them with horror on your TV screen, on our TV screens. We would have to act, as I said, if they go actively after Hindus, if they try to start killing Indian citizens, if they try to kill our students, and worst of all, if they attack the Indian High Commission in Dhaka and our consulates spread out over Bangladesh, that would be of immediate concern, and we would have to deal with it as any large nation would need to deal with it. I don't have to discuss it on national television. The other issue, which is of immediate concern, is the securing of our large border with Bangladesh to ensure that forces inimical to India and inimical to our national interests don't force their way in through that long border. Therefore, I see on the screen that the BSF is on high alert. We may be moving in our army to secure the border further. Please don't forget also that this has huge implications on what we call the chicken's neck, on the northeast, on the security of the entire northeast, on the security of my home state, West Bengal, and moreover, the impact it must be having right now as we speak on public opinion all over India, but particularly in West Bengal, which is directly impacted, and where many are descendants like me of families who were originally for centuries settled in Dhaka, Bikrampur, in what we call East Bengal before partition. And they would be particularly sensitive to the fate of Bengali Hindus who opted to stay on in Bangladesh because they thought that that is the country of their identity and culture, etc. Moreover, it is very ironical that Bangladesh broke free from the yoke of Pakistan military rule because they said that language and culture is more important, Bengali language and culture is more important than religion. But today, it would appear to me that the situation is so volatile that it could turn in the opposite direction.
Yes.
They could try to argue that ultimately the religious identity is more important than the Bengali language culture. So then definitely it would take an anti-India, anti-Hindu turn, and then definitely we would have to, not on national television, but quietly sit and look at our strategic options.
Okay.
Because we cannot sit by and watch Hindus or Indians being killed on the streets of Bangladesh.
Right.
That is
Okay.
difficult.
So I'm going to slip into a very short break, but we come back with this and lots more on the very latest that's happening in Bangladesh and its many implications for India, from strategic to military to the humanitarian angle that it may unleash for us as well. But it's time for a quick break. Rolling coverage continues. Stay with us.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Army coup in Bangladesh. Hasina flies out of country. Sheikh Hasina ousted, flees nation amidst unprecedented protests. Angry mob storms into Bangladesh Prime Minister's residence. Protesters vandalize Mujibur Rahman's statue. Dhaka Palace ransacked. Where is Sheikh Hasina finally headed? Flight radar says that she was spotted over Kolkata. Aircraft carrying Sheikh Hasina entered Indian airspace, landed at the Hindon Air Base. But what's her final destination?
After a great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
बहुत ही परफॉर्मेंस आई सारे दी थे बढ़िया रिजल्ट्स मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
Our $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
After a great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. अर्शदीप हमारे साथ हैं।
ਉਹਦੀ ਪਰਫਾਰਮੈਂਸ ਆਈ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਮਿਲੇ।
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters.
Welcome back. You're watching our rolling coverage of the very latest that's happening in Bangladesh. It's in turmoil. There is political flux. There is uncertainty that is of unprecedented levels. So on your screen are some of those visuals of when the protesters took to streets, vandalized the most historic areas and places of Bangladesh. Mujibur Rahman's statue was vandalized. The father of Bangladesh, his statue was vandalized. The Ganabhaban, where Sheikh Hasina used to be, has been vandalized. Then the museum has been as well. Even as the army chief has called for calm, asked protesters to go back, their number one demand has been met. Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has fled the country. She didn't even have enough time to actually deliver a video message. It was done by the army chief when he told Bangladesh and the world that the Prime Minister has fled due to a serious security issue. 4 lakh protesters, according to some reports, were on the streets of Dhaka protesting against Sheikh Hasina. What happens next in Bangladesh? The security implications it has for India. The humanitarian aspect of this entire crisis. Could it lead to more Bangladeshis wanting to enter India? Those are questions that the Indian diplomatic, strategic and security establishment is now grappling with. But first up, let's listen in to what Mamata Banerjee had to say, Bengal Chief Minister, on what is happening in Bangladesh.
কেউ কোনো সাম্প্রদায়িকতার মূলক আচরণ করবেন না এবং আইন হাতে নেবেন না। যারা বিপদে পড়বে আমাদের ভাই বোনেরা, কারণ এখন অনেকে আছে, আমরা গভর্নমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়া এবং গভর্নমেন্ট অফ বাংলাদেশকে দেখে রাখছি। গভর্নমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়া যেভাবে বলবে আমরা সেভাবেই করব। আর আমি সমস্ত পলিটিক্যাল পার্টি লিডারদের অনুরোধ করছি এবং বিশেষ করে সমস্ত জগতের সবাইকে, দয়া করে এমন কিছু পোস্ট করবেন না যাতে কোনো সাম্প্রদায়িক সম্প্রীতি এখানে নষ্ট হয়।
Okay, that was Mamata Banerjee saying that Bengal, like India, is standing in Bangladesh's need of our my colleagues Saurabh Gupta and Mohammad Ghazali joining us on this broadcast. Saurabh, to you first, joining us live from Kolkata. Give us the very latest that's happening there. A very close vigil is what West Bengal is also now keeping on how things are unfolding in Bangladesh.
Well, let me tell you, the parliament in Bangladesh's Dhaka has been stormed. Protesters are occupying parliament. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's residence has been stormed. The gates have been breached. Protesters have enjoyed a meal, looted the residence, including saris, including utensils, including whatever they could lay their hands on. They've taken it and walked out. Chaos prevails on the streets of Dhaka. Television stations have been attacked. And of course, there is absolute chaos on the streets of Dhaka. The Dhaka airport has been shut till 10:30, given the prevailing situation on the streets of Dhaka. So obviously, absolute chaos and anarchy in Dhaka, which is the capital of Bangladesh. And this, of course, follows the resignation of Sheikh Hasina, who then, of course, had to evacuate from her residence just minutes before it was stormed. And she, of course, had to take a helicopter. And then, of course, she has been flown out of Bangladesh. We have been given to understand that a special Bangladesh Air Force plane has landed at the Hindon Air Base along with Sheikh Hasina. Now, perhaps the indications of Sheikh Hasina going to resign were there from yesterday. Yesterday onwards, the situation started getting bad. Yesterday, almost about, many were killed in the protests. But it was difficult to fathom that it would all happen so soon. But in the morning also, there were indications that perhaps Sheikh Hasina would step down, but not in this fashion that we've seen that has played out through the day, where she's had to flee, she's had to leave the country. Protesters have stormed Ganabhaban, the residence of the Prime Minister, stolen saris, stolen paintings, and, basically anything that they could lay their hands on, they've walked off with. Also, they've, stormed Parliament. They're sitting in Parliament right now. And, you can see protesters in the Parliament in Bangladesh. It's called the Jatiyo Sangshad. So that is the situation that prevails. The Dhaka airport has been shut given the prevailing situation. An Indigo flight that was headed to Dhaka made a
from
U-turn,
Dhaka, from
diverted
Ground
to
Zero.
Kolkata.
Salman Saeed joins us live on the broadcast. Salman, thanks much for speaking to NDTV. My first question to you, explain to us, talk to us, what is happening on ground right now? How is the situation anywhere close to being under control, or is it as bad as some of the visuals seem to indicate?
Currently, I'm right now standing in front of the Parliament building. It's just behind, few meters ahead. It's the intersection here. Thousands of people are in the streets celebrating the victory. Everyone is showing the peace signs. If you can see behind me, people are all waiting. They're very happy that the military has taken over. I've spoken to a lot of students who are happy now that a lot of people have expressed their concern that the military has taken over. That there's still some places that have violence has taken place. Happy right now. There's still some places have some violence has taken place, but that's very common. It'll take time to take the whole city under control. But the attitude, there are people who are very happy. Students have expressed their. The students have fought for last few weeks. A lot of students dead. People have died. I was just outside 24 hours back. Okay, I'll just let some people talk and then.
No, Salman, I want you to ask a question to them. Ask a question. What is it that they want now?
Sure.
What do they want?
Okay.
Sheikh Hasina has already left the country. Why are they not going back to their houses?
So English. Okay. So what do you want now when Sheikh Hasina is gone? What do you want? Actually,
Yeah. It's a fully shameful.
Okay.
And we hope in next generation got the democracy.
Okay.
Actually,
Okay.
Salman,
I want to come back to you.
For the democracy.
Salman,
Okay.
I want to come back
Thank
to
you.
you because
Thank you.
Because
Thank
in a situation like this, first of all, I want you to be safe. Secondly, I want to ask you this because what is it that these students want? You tell me. Don't ask those questions. You tell me what is it that you feel that these students or these protesters actually want. Everybody wants them to go back.
The student wants, initially it was on their quota. All of their demands were they were there initially it was only the quota, but then they wanted the government down, and they wanted democracy and no more corruption in this country. I've spoken to hundreds of students. And they have expressed that they want a non-corruption country.
Okay, I see lots of people behind you. It just tells that everybody is still on the streets and nobody is going back despite appeals for calm, despite appeals for normalcy. Final question, Salman. Final question I want to ask you this is there a word that's coming in from the army after the army chief's message? What is happening on ground? Do you see enough police? Do you see enough security? Because this could spiral into a bigger crisis, a security crisis.
Exactly. What I've seen is there are militaries, but there's no police. There's been some violence across. So we will like to just move out if the crowd is getting too heavier. So we will move away from here, right? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, that was Salman Saeed. We are trying to reach out to him to get us a sense of how things are right now on ground. You heard and you saw how he was actually completely taken over with the number of people on the streets, giving you an indication how volatile things are on ground and how inadequate the present security infrastructure is, given that lakhs of people still on the streets. Mohammad Ghazali, let me bring you in now. As things on the screens right now are flashes coming in that the External Affairs Minister has met Prime Minister Modi to apprise him of the crisis that's taking place in Bangladesh. Tell us, what is it that's happening in this meeting, a crucial meeting where Prime Minister Modi is getting an update from the External Affairs Minister?
See, Gauri, Sheikh Hasina has landed in India and she has landed at the Hindon Air Base. So certainly, this was all done by the clearance from the government of India. The Indian Air Force, the Indian Defence Services were also involved in it. And perhaps Bangladesh Army Chief was in constant touch with his counterparts here in India. And that is what the latest development is, to which Mr. External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, has gone to apprise the Prime Minister about. And we are also hearing the reports that perhaps Sheikh Hasina is also seeking asylum in UK, though her sister, who is with her, she is already a UK citizen. So to ensure that she leaves India or she gets an asylum in London, in UK, she'll have to leave India in some time. And to apprise the Prime Minister about all these latest developments or what kind of support India can provide in ensuring that they are not seen as pro-Sheikh Hasina back there in Bangladesh when people are out on the street very jubilant that Sheikh Hasina has left the country. So India has to trade a very, you can say, India will have to be very cautious about the way it is perceived back in Bangladesh at a time when the country is not stable. People are out on the street. The borders of Bangladesh with the states in India is very porous, as we know about, and that is exactly, these are some of the developments which the External Affairs Minister is apprising the Prime Minister about, the details about Sheikh Hasina's arrival and her future plans from now onwards, that where she will be heading. Also, what is the ongoing situation back in Bangladesh? Who will be in charge of the interim government? Because the army chief said that the interim government will be installed there, will be elected there. But what will be the procedure? Because you heard the Bangladeshi reporter there, the people want democracy or a government, but after solid consultation with all those who were protesting there. So all the protesters who were out there, they're also demanding that if the new government is elected, anybody who is given the charge for the interim government, it should be done after the consultation with the protesters or the student bodies, which led this entire movement for the last 2-3 months.
Shifting goalpost is what it's looking like. It started with the quota stir. Supreme Court brought it down from 30% to 5%. Now the protesters are still unhappy. And Saurabh, you saw, in fact, the visuals of how Salman Saeed was completely swamped with so many people around him, indicating that this is a security challenge that could quickly snowball into a major humanitarian crisis for India, especially in Bengal, where you are standing.
Absolutely, and this is a concern that, at the end of the day, we are just about, not even, I think, less than 500 kilometers from Dhaka. So that is, of course, the kind of geography this region has. But let me give you an understanding of what seems to have transpired. Now, when these protests started, they were anti-quota protests. And then, of course, there was a comment by Sheikh Hasina referring to Razakars. Who are the Razakars? The Razakars are perhaps the descendants of the Pakistani army's paramilitary that was deployed in East Pakistan to quell the freedom struggle of what was then known as East Pakistan, now Bangladesh. Who was the founder? Who led that freedom struggle? Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Now, the Indian Army also played a huge role in that crisis, but Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's statue today has been vandalized, and that will give you an idea of the kind of shifting of goalposts, because remember, when it began, it was quota protests. We were talking about shifting of goalposts. Then it became Sheikh Hasina's resignation. Now Sheikh Hasina has resigned. So what do the protesters want? Why are they still out on the streets? That's a question that everyone is asking. Because remember, Sheikh Hasina is gone. She's left the country. So this is, of course, a crisis that is continuing. There's absolute chaos. Parliament has been stormed. Ganabhaban has been stormed. Ganabhaban was the official residence of Sheikh Hasina. People have walked off with saris, with utensils, with, even fish. And there were videos circulating online of people eating inside Ganabhaban. Parliament has been stormed. Parliament has been occupied by protesters. There is no government. Interim government has not yet been formed. The army has issued no firing orders. So it's an absolute free-for-all, anarchy, chaos on the streets of Dhaka. The Dhaka airport has been shut given the prevailing situation on the streets of Dhaka. And this is a crisis that has gone from bad to worse. Remember, it's not only about Sheikh Hasina, it's not only about clearly quotas, because that debate was settled, that answer was settled long time ago. The High Court's order was, in the higher appellate court brought it down. So this is clearly something which the Awami League, the ruling Awami League has described, or was the ruling rather, I should say, in the past tense now, has described that this was always an illegal attempt at a power grab, is what the Awami League said. Right. That the quota was just an excuse, the quota protests. But that, having said that, much water has flown under the bridge, and right now the situation remains chaotic. An interim government is what everyone is waiting for.
Yes.
Return to peace, calm is what everyone is waiting for in Dhaka.
Indeed, the situation is volatile and possibly could snowball into something bigger for India, and that's what we need to keep a very close vigil on. But what has Sheikh Hasina been like and her tenure been like for India in the last 10 years? India was the country one of the few countries that stood rock solidly behind Sheikh Hasina when there were questions asked about her democratic credentials earlier in the year. In the last 10 years, she's had a very good rapport and bond with the Prime Minister Modi, and that has resulted in some very landmark key decisions being taken on both sides. Let's get in Disha Bapchi to tell us on what has Sheikh Hasina's tenure been like for India, what has been the India-Bangla relationship in the last 10 years between these two leaders.
So right, Gauri, in terms of the rapport between PM Modi and Sheikh Hasina and India and Bangladesh in general, as you mentioned, under former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we've seen very excellent, very strong ties between India and Bangladesh, and most recently under Modi 3.0. In fact, Sheikh Hasina was the first foreign leader to visit India in this the government's new term. So, and even this visit was crucial for ties between India and Bangladesh, since both countries actually agreed to they had a discussion about the Tista measures and to counter terrorism on the India-Bangladesh border. So in these issues, India and Bangladesh worked very closely together. And as you also mentioned, rightly so, that earlier in the year when Sheikh Hasina secured her 4th term in power in Bangladesh in the elections, there were many countries which criticized the elections, calling it unfair, calling it undemocratic, because the opposition parties did not participate in this election in Bangladesh. But India stood firmly and said that this is Bangladesh's domestic affairs, and that they stood by Bangladesh's elections, calling it fair. So, close ties between India and Bangladesh. So now it's going to be we have to wait and watch to see how ties between India and this new interim government in Bangladesh will look like, because as history has showed, this is not the first time there's been a military takeover or army takeover in Bangladesh. They have a history of army takeovers in their country. But when it comes to ties between India and these military governments, they've not necessarily always been good. But under former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, ties between India and Bangladesh were quite strong. And even recently, Sheikh Hasina visited China, and the visit actually ended abruptly and quite early, which indicated that, in a sense, ties between Bangladesh and China weren't necessarily doing so well, which also is, in a sense, highlighting that Bangladesh was shifting closer to India. And especially the fact that the two countries were willing to work together and discuss the Teesta Dam project and the Teesta Dam restoration. So all of these things were crucial in terms of the ties between India and Bangladesh. So now it's really time to wait and watch and see how the situation develops in Bangladesh. And as per resources and reports, Hasina is in Delhi, so it's wait and watch to see what happens next.
All right, we take a very, very short break. We come back with lots more. Rolling coverage of the turmoil in Bangladesh continues. Stay with us. We come back with a very short break.
Today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
ਉਹਦੀ performance ਆਈ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਮਿਲੇ.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
So a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is
It's an ugly end to Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule. The former Prime Minister quits and leaves Bangladesh. Army takes over the country and plans an interim government. Government overthrown and chaos is there on the streets of Bangladesh. Protesters take over Sheikh Hasina's residence, parliament ransacked, Awami League offices set on fire. Protesters also vandalize Mujibur Rahman's statue. Army chief appeals for peace. Forces won't open fire, he says. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval meets Sheikh Hasina at Indian Air Force Air Base. As she arrives in Delhi, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar briefs Prime Minister Modi amidst Bangladesh crisis. Images that sum up the day. Bangladesh's former founder and father of the nation, Sheikh Mujib's statue being vandalized by protesters. It was a day of fast-paced and dramatic developments. Sheikh Hasina quit as Bangladesh's Prime Minister and army moved in to take control amidst violent protests demanding her ouster. Country's army chief, General Waqizur Rahman Zama, told the media that the army will form an interim government and appeal protesters to return to the path of peace. Sheikh Hasina, who started her 5th term earlier this year, left Dhaka in a military aircraft. The protests in Bangladesh, which began last month, swiftly escalated, and it started, remember, as an agitation against quota system over what was seen as a decision which was seen as undemocratic by the government. What the government has done was it had created a quota of 30% of government jobs which are reserved for family members of Mukti Juddhas those who fought in Bangladesh's War of Independence in 1971. What is the situation on ground? We'll try and connect with our reporter as well. But first, let me bring in the guest. Lieutenant General Atta Hasnain is joining us. We have Nitin Pai, Director of the Takshila Institute, and Salim Samad, Senior Journalist. Nitin, I'm beginning with you. I was looking at the tweet which you have put out. Once a pro-democracy figure, a leader that the world saw a bulwark against Islamic extremism, presided over high economic rate, and then she turned into autocrat and authoritarian. Is that what will be the legacy of Sheikh Hasina? You have to unmute yourself, Nitin.
Yeah, it's difficult to keep me silent though. Anyway, so I think that's probably going to be the legacy unless there's another chapter in political life. In some ways, it's quite disappointing because we grew up seeing Sheikh Hasina as the bulwark of democracy, fighting against military rule, bringing back democracy and secular democracy to Bangladesh, and doing quite well in both ensuring some kind of economic order and some kind of political stability in the last 15, 20 years. In that sense, she was the best choice for India. But, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think over the past 10 years, it has been a steady decline in the way she handled the power that was entrusted to her. It could have been a very different story, but I guess we are not in a position to second guess what her thought processes were. But I think it was a terrible kind of an end to a great sort of career.
And Lieutenant General Atta Hasnain, the role of the army here becomes very, very important because everybody is watching out for every statement which is being made by the army chief. How is the situation different from what we have seen, say, in Pakistan?
Hey, Maria, thank you first of all for inviting me for your very important show. While I agree with my friend Nitin very much with what he says, but at the same time, if I may just add that for the last 10 years perhaps, Sheikh Hasina was battling against the odds. There was a huge backlash of radicalism, sponsored, if I may say, from across our other side of the borders, that's from Pakistan, and with attempts perhaps even from beyond to try and create some kind of, to extend the arc of radical Islam into Bangladesh. The portents of that were always there in Bangladesh. She was a bulwark against it. And in the last couple of years, she was resisting it even more. And one of the reasons why you look at her non-democratic credentials in this particular period in the last few years is primarily because she was the one who was actually battling the radicals all this while. I remind you of 2015 when the ISIS made serious attempts to get into Bangladesh at that time. If ISIS had succeeded in getting into Bangladesh, I can tell you the security situation for India in the northeast and on our borders with Bangladesh would have been something very different. Having said that, as far as the Bangladesh army is concerned, I think I know the army reasonably well. I have served with the Bangladesh army in the United Nations. And I can say that there is a clear-cut division within the army. There are pragmatic, secular people, right-thinking people there, but there is an element of radicalism also within the army. And therefore, at this moment, there will be all kinds of tugs and pulls in all different directions, which will go on. Very early to say which side will ultimately emerge the victor. But I, for one, would not have liked to be in the situation or position of the Bangladesh army chief at this time. It's a very, very challenging situation for him because having known the history of Bangladesh, radicals in the streets, radicals everywhere, this is going to be one testing time for them.
Salim,
Maria.
I'm coming to you now because, of course, this is a developing situation. We do not know what will happen in the next 24 to 48 hours because the army says that they would be forming the government. It will be an interim government. So are we looking at elections in perhaps immediate term, in a matter of few weeks? Would you suggest that?
Thank you very much. First of all, you have correctly said about the army is having a new interim government. Interim government, according to the Constitution of Bangladesh, will have an election in 90 days. So the interim government has no other mandate, according to the Constitution. They cannot enact a new laws, or they cannot rush away or amend the law. They only have to have the election free and fair and inclusive election in the 90 days. So once there is a 90 days, of course, there will be a lot of fear, and there will be the major three political parties will be the contestant, because there is no fourth party, there is no fifth party. Of course, the Awami League, which has been routed out in this revolution, and the second is, of course, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which we talk about, and of course, the third is the loyal opposition in the parliament for the last 15 years, which is Jatiya Party. Unfortunately, the last two parties were created or formed or floated by the military generals. So obviously, you can understand there's only one party.
Salim, if I may ask you, since you're joining us from Dhaka, in terms of the situation on ground, essentials, how are they placed for the ordinary people who are not protesting? Because, of course, this is a student-led movement which has taken this shape. But what about ordinary citizens of the country?
You will be surprised. If you look at it from the last 72 hours, you will find the the middle class, the working class, including the rickshaw puller, the vendors in the street, they all joined the protest. You may not believe me, but we can take the footage. You'll find the rickshaw pullers, they have carried water bottles, to serve to the protesters who are literally basking under the sun, this hot sun. So you can understand that so much of people have been there. You will find thousands of guardians of the students, of other students, and seniors. They have also joined the protest. The academicians, the cultural groups, the civil society, they were all in the streets of Dhaka for the last 72 hours. So it is, of course, a student protest, which has now, today, has turned into a victory celebration.
Okay. So it's a day of victory celebration which is playing out in Dhaka. But Nitin Pai, the protesters called themselves Long March to Dhaka. That was seen as a movement of defiance, but this movement of defiance has led to an exit of a government of 5 terms. I mean, she was in a 5th term, clearly. Yes. Yes, I will bring in Salman Saeed, but a word from you also, Nitin. Why did the Prime Minister not see this coming, in the sense that there were protests in the past as well, but at that time, these protesters did not have the support of the army? Do you think that made it worse, that there was an attempt to sabotage it from within?
Yeah, first of all, I think I would like to caution everyone to stop looking at things in black or white or good or bad. You know, who's the good guy? Who are the good guys here? Who are the bad guys here, right? Because these are actors playing for politics, trying to achieve political power, whether it's the students, the interim government, or the people in the armed forces, etc. So once we take that lens off and try and look at the situation objectively, I think we'll be able to make better sense from this. We won't get carried away with romantic notions of a great people's revolution leading to democracy and so on. We just don't know how this movie is going to end, right? Now, why didn't Sheikh Hasina see this? I think, see, first of all, it's not new. You know, this is not something which started in July. There's been a ferment of unrest, there's been ferment of protest, boycotts, etc., going on for the last year or so, precipitating in an election. But I think the Awami League had so much power that they stopped really looking at feedback. You know, you tend to believe that you're powerful enough to cross any hurdle. And these protests will be like the protests which you just defeated 6 months ago. So, you tend to believe that you have more power and more hold on power than you really do, especially because people don't give you bad news. In a situation like where Sheikh Hasina was, I'm sure you couldn't go to her and say, ma'am, we have bad news, because the people bringing bad news would actually be sort of cancelled out, right? Pushed out of power. So it's like driving a car after you've broken your dashboard, your rearview mirrors, and your fuel gauge, and just pressing the accelerator. At some point, it's going to give. And I think that is the lesson which comes out of the current situation in Bangladesh.
Okay, let me bring in Salman Saeed, who's joining us from Dhaka. He is in fact 200 meters away from Ganabhaban, which was stormed and vandalized just some time back. Over to you, Salman. Speak to the protesters. What is the sense on the ground?
I'll just make a correction. I'm not exactly 200. It's few hundred meters away, very close to the Prime Minister's home. You can see the people standing behind me. They were telling me we went inside for the first time in our life. And I'll just connect with one guy. আমাকে একটু বলবেন আপনারা ইয়াতে প্রধানমন্ত্রী বাসায় গিয়ে কি দেখেছিলেন? আমরা সেখানে দেখছি উল্লাসিত জনতার ঢল। আমরা এমন একটা অবস্থায় এই পর্যন্ত জীবনযাপন করেছি, সেটা হচ্ছে আমরা কখনো ফেসবুকে একটা ভিডিও দেখলে বা একটা পিকচার দেখলে লাইক দেওয়ার মতো সাহস আমাদের ছিল না। এতটা আতঙ্কের ভিতরে বীর বাঙালি জীবনযাপন করতে হয়েছে। এবং কি বাবা মায়ের সাথে একটা সন্তান তার স্বাধীন সম্পর্কে, তার ব্যক্তি সম্পর্কে, বাংলাদেশ সম্পর্কে কথা বলতে পারতো না, এখন হয় আতঙ্কে। এখন মনে হয় এই বাঙালি এত বিজয় লাভ করতে পারে, এত উল্লাসিত, যেটা মনে হয় না স্বাভাবিক ভাষায় কাউকে বোঝানো যাবে। আমরা very happy. So basically he said he has, after so long, he's seen people celebrating inside the home. There has been a freedom of speech. All these years, they couldn't even talk to their parents or put like on Facebook, on anything against the government. But now they're very happy that democracy will come back and they have the freedom of speech. They are trying to talk freely, in open, in public, which was never possible in last decade or two, I would say.
Salman, if you can hear me,
yes, I can.
You know, the sense certainly right now is a sense of jubilation. Here is the Prime Minister who has left the country. Is there also some sense among some section of people that she should have faced the law, she should have been around them, you know, even if it was about ouster of the Prime Minister, it should not have meant, it should not have been about her exit rather than she facing the law?
Basically, it's too early to say find those kind of people. As I was on the streets of Dhaka, I went to the Shahbag and I moved from Shahbag, where actually the students' protest started, and then I moved to the Prime Minister's house. All the places I've seen, people are really angry and they're happy that she left. And if they would have got her, then maybe there would have been a different kind of vandalization, or she would have been like, there would be a massacre. But thank God it has, she can't have escaped, she escaped alive. But people want to bring them to justice who are still there. There's no police on the street. There are still police stations that have been being burned down and looted. It's not safe at the moment in the streets of Dhaka because of law and order is currently not in place. But I'm sure I've seen the common people exchanging flowers and greetings to the military. Yeah, I've seen students and then political party people in the streets celebrating and saying, we will just now have to wait for the democracy to return and the country to run in proper law and order. Freedom of speech has come back and they will hope that country will log. And the students, who were unarmed, who died in this protest, were really, happy that now they will have democracy. Now they see a bright future. They want no more corruption in this country. They want a corruption-free Bangladesh. That's what they have told me.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Salman Saeed there reporting for NDTV from Dhaka. Joining us now is Aisha Siddiqa, renowned author and Pakistani political scientist. Aisha, thank you so much. How are you viewing the developments in the neighborhood in Bangladesh, given that Sheikh Hasina has fled the country and now that there is an interim government? What kind of impact will it have on all the countries be it India or Pakistan?
See, firstly, I think we were kind of expecting this thing to happen. Reason being that Sheikh Hasina, I mean, just imagine 3 rigged elections, control of, politics, control of opposition parties, and then after COVID, not managing to, kind of build up the economy or sustain the economy or economic growth patterns that were there. People were unhappy. And the other thing is that because of her very peculiar politics, which is, very partisan politics, she wasn't including other people, the support Awami League into the political conversation. So a very one-sided linear politics. So this was expected that this is going to happen. And the kind of, it was an authoritarian government. So it had to go, people were fed up, people were unhappy. So that's one. Now, the impact it will have on the region, of course, it will affect relations with India. Not that they're going to be sour, but Sheikh Hasina was entirely dependent on India. And somehow the Indian government in Delhi wasn't making an effort to also reach out and connect with the BNP, Bangladesh National Party, and with Khalida, Begum Khalida Zia, and other stakeholders. So that would be a disadvantage for India. As far as Pakistan is concerned, of course, there would be, there'll be a sigh of relief because Awami League and Sheikh Hasina was seen as very anti-Pakistan. They were trying, Islamabad had been trying hard to make an effort to kind of reconnect, but that wasn't successful. So I'm sure that they are going to be watched carefully who is going to be the next one in. It's important to watch the interim government because even if Begum Khalida Zia comes in, if there are next elections, let's see what's there in store for Bangladesh politics. But definitely the students, the new political class, the younger generation will have an impact. They will be also on the negotiating table. So let's see where it goes.
And Aisha, in terms of how events have panned out, here is a Prime Minister who earlier this year was sworn in for a 5th term. And then things start going south completely and she had to leave the country. Do you think that she did not see this coming? And just look at the sheer dramatic nature of these developments. Her father's statue was smashed. Do you think Sheikh Hasina has ruined the legacy of her father?
Of course. I mean, let's be very fair and honest. I mean, Sheikh Mujib himself was, fairly authoritarian in his attitude, but, perhaps he didn't know any better. And when you are a founding father and when you're trying to create a new nation, who perhaps are tempted to become more authoritarian, depending on, especially if you don't have a team of people around you. But what Sheikh Hasina has done in the name of getting her party back, her influence back, she was totally dependent on the police force, police and intelligence, and she had even rubbed the army the wrong way, the Bangladesh military. So she didn't have too many friends over there. Then amongst the people, I mean, look, I am based in the UK at the moment, and every second Bangladeshi that I come across was anti-Awami League. So one was wondering, when she was in government, one used to wonder, I mean, that, talking to the Bangladeshis there in the UK, that what kind of politics do they have? Do they not understand reality of their own country? But it seems that their own prime minister didn't understand the reality of their own country, that, you can't push linear politics, entirely and all the time. Especially the last nail in the coffin was giving all those facilities to war veterans, to Mukti Bahani war veterans. When there is a country where you have where the jobless youth, and where there is a there's a lack of and a need for economic growth. So her policies were too one-sided, and of course, last but not the least, instead of looking internally at balancing her politics and negotiating with her opposition, she was constantly looking towards New Delhi and getting her support from there. And I think what has also changed is that with 2024 elections in Delhi, which is completely distracted, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his BJP, and they perhaps can't help her the way they've done in the past.
Even as we speak, former Prime Minister Hasina is in New Delhi, and she's likely to fly out to London. Just look at her legacy in terms of what she was. She was the country's, in fact, she was Bangladesh's first female prime minister, and she brought about economic reforms and liberalization. Which year do you think things started going wrong with her and her decisions?
When she kind of started manipulating the first elections. I mean, it's a process. The simple answer is that if you represented the legacy of a party which had built Bangladesh, then you would have to understand that Bangladesh has evolved over years. There are other stakeholders as well. There is the BNP, there are more conservative parties as well. I mean, she was doing a very one-sided kind of a politics. And I don't think at this stage, India is in a position to save her. At best, they can save her life and not kind of throw her out of Delhi and not send her back to Bangladesh, where she probably gets arrested. But I don't think many people can help her. That is, what has happened is that post-Second World War, politics in all these countries around the world, especially in the developing countries, has changed. The expectations have changed. There is a younger generation. There is technology. There is social media. And you can't run a country's politics as you would maybe 20 years ago. And this is where she completely misread.
Aisha, my last question to you, because we are witnessing a great degree of turmoil around the world. Multiple countries are at war. Ukraine, Russia, there is Israel, Iran tension ongoing as well. But when we look at Asia, only recently there was that entire coup that played out in Sri Lanka. If we focus on Bangladesh today, what do you think will be the likely fallout of this in the entire Asian countries?
Well, this is too wide a question. I mean, China itself is a subcontinent, and its politics authoritarian, different. China and Bangladesh have, basically they have financial ties, they have economic ties. China invests in Bangladesh, and so does United States. Bangladesh's ties with both the West and China and India. I think all these relations will remain the same. Nothing is going to shift majorly. But the interim government will be more focused on balancing domestic politics.
All right. Aisha, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on NDTV. Let me go back to the guests. Sultan Muhammad Zakaria, co-founder of Bangladeshi Diaspora for Justice and Accountability, is also joining us now. I've been following all your tweets very, very closely because you have been, tracking the developments very, very, as it has been unfolding. It's a historic moment, as you say, as people of Bangladesh now reclaim the place from where illegal orders were made to murder them. But you also say, Sultan, that Sheikh Hasina should be tried in International Criminal Court.
Yes, she should be.
Is that likely to happen now, given the developments that she has already fled the country?
Well, that's the effort that we have to make, because she has a lot of blood in her hands. Just if you can imagine, in the span of 48 hours, the number of young people she killed, her forces and her student wings killed on the behest of her. It's unprecedented, not only in Bangladesh's history. I think in contemporary, you can't show me in anywhere in the world that in 48 hours, a ruler of a country killed 300 people of their own, young people, students, men and women. Most of them are teenagers. And then in the span of these 2 weeks, the official figure is almost like 450 plus, and unofficial figure, because the Sheikh Hasina's regime, she sent the DGFI and the intelligence agencies to take the death register from the hospitals of officials, both the private and public, were told not to disclose any information about the disease, any information about how many people are wounded, and etc. She had a carnage. She laid a carnage on her own people for the last 2 weeks, and that's just only one aspect of her crime. In my lifetime, I have never seen police and security forces shooting at protesters indiscriminately like this.
Okay. Sultan, continue to be with us, because Nitin Pai will be, exiting the panel in just a bit. So Nitin, a word from you. What is likely to happen in Bangladesh in the next 1 week? Okay, I think we have lost that connection with Nitin Pai. Lieutenant General, okay. Nitin, if you heard me, what is likely to happen in Bangladesh?
Bangladesh is a very sophisticated polity. The people are politically mature, they're politically aware, and they're politically empowered. There are very strong political parties which represent various sections of society. So you're going to see a contestation, right? A lot depends on the army and the interim government it creates. If the interim government by the army, created by the army, goes ahead and restores democracy, elections, etc., we are going to see a good outcome. But as many people know, that armies and interim governments really don't go together. General Musharraf formed an interim government which lasted almost like 15 years in one way or the other, right? So we just hope that the army doesn't retain power in the way it does, because that's going to export a whole lot of different kinds of vectors of disorder to different parts of the world. So we should hope that the interim government conducts elections, and whichever party comes to power is a party which India will have to deal with. And the party in Dhaka will have to deal with India, who is in power. So I think the fact that who is on which side is a little overdone. We should just hope that stability returns, and it's a form of stability where there is some kind of a constitutional liberal democracy at play, and not some whimsical military dictator who retains power.
All right, Nitin, thank you so much. I would request all the panelists to continue to be with us. This remains our top focus here on NDTV. A short break and then I return.
After great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport, where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
The performance is results मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
And today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
Good evening and welcome. The real political crisis in Bangladesh will, in this program over the next 1 hour, bring you the very latest. I'm Vishnu Shom. It started in the morning when Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, fled her country. She is now in India after flying to the Hindon Air Force Base on the outskirts of Delhi. She's met the National Security Advisor. Is she going to be going to the United Kingdom after this? Will they grant her permission to stay in the United Kingdom? At this juncture, we just don't know. She's in India at the moment on a day in which there's been absolute anarchy on the streets of Dhaka. Lakhs of people out on the roads. They went into a house, they've pilfered things inside a house, they've taken away furniture, utensils. The Bangladesh army is now in charge. An interim government is in the process of being formed. But the mobs are still out on the streets of Dhaka, and there is a real worry that more damage and destruction can still take place. It is a free-for-all on the streets of the Bangladeshi capital. What are the ramifications of this, both from a law and order standpoint in Bangladesh, from a stability situation across South Asia, and of course the Sheikh Hasina story. What happens to her next? Will she be granted asylum in the United Kingdom? If not, where does she go, or does she stay in India? Remember, she's been a close friend of India's as well. When all of this took place, there are some reports which suggest that the army chief went up to her and said, this is the situation, there are lakhs of people out on the road, your position is untenable, and you have 45 odd minutes to resign. She did apparently resign. She was put onto a helicopter, flown to the Kurmitola Air Base, and from there she boarded a Hercules transport aircraft which flew all the way to Hindon Air Force Base. That's where she is now. As I mentioned, she's met the National Security Advisor. We do expect a statement from the External Affairs Ministry later on, and perhaps a statement in Parliament by the Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, tomorrow. But here's what the Bangladesh Army Chief had to say on trying to get the situation in control.
শান্ত হয়ে যায় তাহলে আর কারফিউর কোনো প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো জরুরি অবস্থার প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো কারফিউর প্রয়োজন নাই, কোনো গোলাগুলির প্রয়োজন নাই। আমি আদেশ দিয়ে দিয়েছি সেনাবাহিনী কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না, পুলিশ কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না।
Well, there's an important meeting which is now taking place with the Cabinet Committee on Security, which is looking very closely at the situation in Bangladesh. My colleague Vasudha joins us in just a few moments from now. We'll get more updates on that. But the government is well and truly looking out at the situation in Bangladesh, trying to get a proper understanding of what the situation on the ground is. I'm joined now by Sushant Sareen, the strategic affairs expert, and India's former High Commissioner in Bangladesh and the former diplomat Veena Sikri. Ambassador Sikri, did you expect the situation to unravel in Bangladesh quite as quickly as it did?
I must say very clearly that the situation began as a quota reform movement, but it has morphed into something totally different. I think that one must understand that the quota reform movement, those students who were uncoordinated leaders, they were just coordinators from different universities. There was no structured hierarchy among them. These quota reform leaders had been supported by Sheikh Hasina. In 2018, she actually abolished the quota. There was no quota for 6 years. And then when the High Court tried to restore the quota, she went to Supreme Court and got a decision. Now, right up to 21st July's Supreme Court decision, the quota reform movement's demand had been met by that time. But in the meanwhile, with the firing, with the Awami League, Chhatra League, the Students' Wing of Awami League, the Shibir Students' Wing of Jamaat, and the BNP Students' Wing, with them entering the fray, the program became totally political, totally political. Even yesterday, the Daily Star in Bangladesh declared that 204 people had died. That was before the curfew and the additional deaths that have taken place yesterday and today. 204 people had died. Of them, 53 were students. That's all. The rest were, civil society people, the police, they were the these political activists and so on. So the movement has morphed into something totally different. It has probably been taken over by the Jamatis, because when you're showing these visuals of the protesters trying to vandalize a statue of father of the nation, Sheikh Mujib, this cannot be the students who will do it. The students are completely patriotic. Their movement was apolitical, and they had got the relief they wanted. But now the statue is being vandalized. The home of Sheikh Mujib, where he was assassinated, that has been burnt, and we have seen that even Hindu homes are being burnt. It is complete chaos. The army chief has presented an interim list. He is now, I understand, meeting the president and hopes to get approval of the interim list and announce that the interim government can start its activities. But in the meanwhile, the protesters have to agree to leave the streets and go back to their universities or their homes and,
All right, Ambassador
start
Sikri, just be with us for a moment. We've got some breaking news. The Cabinet Committee on Security meeting here in Delhi. Vasudha Venugopal joins us for more on this. Vasudha, what are you hearing? All right, apologies. We've lost that line. Sushant Sareen, let me come back to you. There has been no statement, Sushant, from the United Kingdom that they'll accept Sheikh Hasina and any appeal to stay on asylum bid in the United Kingdom. She's now here in India. Is there a strong possibility that she could be here for some time until she figures out where she wants to go? Or do you believe there is a real possibility that she will be granted asylum in India? She's been a close friend of this country.
Look, if she asks for asylum in India, I see no reason why India should not give it to her. India has not had a very stellar reputation of standing by her friends. Thankfully, this time, we've given her a safe passage. We've tried to do it earlier in Afghanistan as well with Dr. Najibullah. But I think it is important that while we continue to engage with whoever is in power in Bangladesh, we also give a very firm message that, yes, anybody who's been a friend of India, if they want asylum in India, I don't see any reason why we cannot consider it. But it'll depend on Sheikh Hasina whether she would want asylum in India, because there would, of course, be certain limitations in India's case, simply because, we border Bangladesh. If Sheikh Hasina wants to get active in politics again and starts doing her politics from here, then it could impact on our relations with whoever is in power in Bangladesh. There would be those considerations, certainly. But at least in the interim, I see no reason why we should not treat her as an honored guest and convey this very firm message all across the world that we will stick with our friends and we will continue to do business with whoever is in power in their countries. And other countries do it, and I see no reason India should not do it.
Ambassador Sikri, interesting. If this is the case, then it would be the second time when she's been granted asylum, right, in our country. It's 75 when Sheikh Mujib was assassinated, that she came to our country, spent several years. Her love for India, in a sense, would have really grown in the number of years that she spent earlier on. And how the clock comes full circle, the world comes full circle in a sense for her now, that she's back in our country in a very similar situation.
It is really tragic to see that it was her father's assassination who then led to her. She had been abroad. She and her sister Rehana, they were not in Dhaka at the time when the assassination took place on 15th August 1975. And otherwise, they would have been, with the entire family, her younger brother, newly married brother, the young child brother, Sheikh Russell, they were all cruelly assassinated. But then she was in Germany at the time because her husband was a scientist and he was doing some work there. And she was given asylum in India after that. She stayed here for several years and went back to Dhaka when then the Awami League elected her as president of the Awami League, and she went back and started her activities there. Now, of course, it's tragic that at this very short notice, because the students' movement morphed into a political anti-Sheikh Hasina movement with the Jamatis leading it, no doubt supported by Pakistan and China. I say China because I see that the way the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was treated in China in her recent visit there in the second week of July. It was very unusual for China to treat a guest whom they have invited in this manner.
Sure.
And I've been asking, I said all along, why did this happen? And now we know the reason why, because they had already thought that they didn't, they wouldn't support her anymore.
Okay, Ambassador
So I
Sikri,
think
half a second. Let's just get a ground report right now. Salman Saeed, a reporter, with us at this stage. What is the situation, Salman, on the ground right now? What exactly are you seeing?
Hello, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Salman, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
What is the situation right now? Are the mobs still out on the streets of Dhaka?
I'm standing just a few hundred, like a kilometer from the parliament and the prime minister's home that was vandalized. This place called Mohammedpur area, but the police station just right next to my home. I don't want to name the station, but it's being literally set on fire. I can see smoke. People are vandalizing the cars and everything, looting. I've spoken to a couple of people. They were like taking out their printers, the arms and ammunitions from the police station, and they're just looting. And they're going over. I can still hear the sounds from here. Streets of Dhaka is really chaotic. When I just crossed the house of the parliament, prime minister home, just behind the parliament, there was a huge traffic there. People were trying to just get inside her home, trying to take away things. I met some of the people. I spoke to them. Some of them I met. One of the person who found Bangladesh national flag on this floor lying, and he brought it. He thought it should not be lying. It should be in a place where he can show respect. At this point, people are really upset and scared a bit. Tensions are really high. We are hearing a lot of ruling party supporters, leaders, their houses are being set on fire, right? And people are really struggling to stay on the streets.
Right. All right, just be with us for a moment, Salman, and be careful where you're reporting from. Joined now by Professor Mohammad Yunus, the 2006 Nobel laureate and founder of Grameen Bank, one of the most well-known Bangladeshi citizens. Thank you, sir, very much for being with us.
Thank you.
I think the biggest worry now is law and order in Bangladesh. We'll talk about politics in a while, but it's law and order and who is in charge. What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, that's a very important issue, law and order. That's where it all began. It completely collapsed. And that's led to the demand for resignation of the government, resignation of the prime minister, and it finally led to that resignation. Today, there's a celebration of the kind that we had on 16 December 1971, when we freed ourselves from Pakistanis. And now we got rid of a very totalitarian government. So there's a lot of celebration all over the country, not the Dhaka city. Millions of people out in the street enjoying their freedom, that finally we get free from all those difficulties that we have got through. So that's we're enjoying it, and we see that a new era is beginning in Bangladesh. Finally got rid of the people who have been torturing them, creating problems for them, and corruptions and everything all over the country. So now,
Yunus, is it not your worry, sir? Is it not your worry that there would be more instability going forward? One of the points mentioned.
Hopefully, the instability can be packed into a box and keep it there. That's what Hasina was trying to do. Or instability to come out to create a stability, because ultimate goal, ultimate cure, ultimate medicine of stability is to bring democracy that was completely denied in Bangladesh. So for the first time, we'll get a chance to have a real election. That's what the whole idea of having this revolution.
No, but Professor Yunus, the worry also, sir.
A transparent election.
Right, by all means,
absolutely.
Democracy must thrive in Bangladesh, no two ways about that. But in the interim period, isn't there a real worry that there are Islamist elements and extremist elements in Bangladesh?
All kinds of elements, of course. Any nation
so that's the problem, sir, because why would students go and destroy a statue of the father of Bangabandhu, of Sheikh Mujib, which we have on our screen? Are they not being instigated? This was anger against the Prime Minister.
Blame Hasina for that, leading the nation to destroy her father's image, because she has made so bitter thing for the whole country They don't mind they are doing that. It's the responsibility lies squarely on the Prime Minister who did that, made the whole country in that situation.
And do you believe that this interim government, which is now going to be formed, has it in it to actually bring law and order? Because even now, we had a correspondent up just about 3 minutes back, people are looting police stations and making off with weapons.
Yeah, so that's the number one priority, to bring law and order, which Hasina couldn't do. That's why it brought to the point of collapsing of the government. If she could bring law and order, this thing would not happen. So this is the continuation of Hasina regime, that now we have to make sure that the people celebrate and go back and get back to business, get to work, and work in a different way, in a freer way than they have ever done.
What about Hasina herself, sir? She's in India presently. We don't know if she's applied for asylum over here. There were some reports that she might be going off to the United Kingdom. Again, we don't know if the UK has accepted that. What are your thoughts on that? Who might accept her?
I have no idea. You're just talking about having her in India. I don't know whether that would be a good idea, because...
No, I don't know if she's going to... She's in India now. I don't know if she's going to necessarily be in India indefinitely. And I ask that because there has been no word from the British government as yet, assuming that that's where she was headed.
I have no idea. I'm not in the government. I'm not in the contact with anybody. So I have no idea.
What about the rest of her government? I believe the Home Minister's house in Dhanmondi and Dhaka has been destroyed, burnt. There are other members of her government who would potentially be targeted as well. Is that not a matter of huge concern?
Very much concern. So law and order has to be restored. This is the anger, which accumulated anger that led to it, but it's to restrain, make sure we go back to the normalcy as soon as possible.
But Professor Yunus, the one worry that so many of us who observe Bangladesh closely is that the interim might be much more dangerous, must be much more dangerous for Bangladesh. Who is controlling these protesters? Is there an element of terrorists who are involved? Are there other groups looking to create instability in your country? And consequently, from an Indian standpoint, since I'm here in New Delhi, could it not have a regional spillover?
Very much. That's what I've been talking to every single interview that I gave. If you destabilize Bangladesh, it will spill over all around Bangladesh, including Myanmar and Seven Sisters and West Bengal, everywhere. That's why I was very happy that Mamata Banerjee came out with the statement that will open door, because he has to accept those people who are coming out of Bangladesh. Because if it continued months and months, this is what exactly happened. Not only they will spill over, they will bring their anger to all these places where they go, and they will make those their places to attack Bangladesh. So that will not be a very happy situation. And if there's a disgruntled people in those areas, they will mix up with them. It will be a volcanic eruption everywhere around us. And Myanmar shells is coming to Bangladesh very frequently now. So the Myanmar and Bangladesh problem again become bigger problem, because million Rohingyas are in here. They will like to go back to the country. Unless Bangladesh is a democratically run country, peaceful country, nobody will be in peace. If Bangladesh is in trouble, everybody will be in trouble. There's 170 million people. 2/3 of the population are young people. So you have to make sure that they are happy and they law-abiding citizens, and they know there's a democracy. Their democracy has to be practiced. These young people never voted in their life. All these elections, meaningless for them. They never went to the polling booth because those elections never held. So this is the situation that we are our starting point is. So we have to talk to the young people. Look, it will be in order. Democracy will be practiced, and you will be the part of the democracy that you will lead to.
Is there a worry that minorities in Bangladesh, again in this interim period of chaos, might be targeted systematically?
In interim period, I don't know. But if it is a democratic country, then they have a voice, because their voice will count. Like in India, there's a democracy. The minority can go and vote, elect their own representatives.
Yeah. Sir, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. I wish the circumstances had been different. Thank you so much, Mohammed Yunus, for speaking with us. Thank you so much indeed.
Okay.
I'm joined now by David Bergman, a British investigative journalist and a former editor of Netra News, the Bangladeshi news channel. Mr. Bergman, do we have any word from the United Kingdom on whether they would be willing to accept Sheikh Hasina.
There's been no word from the United Kingdom. Of course, Sheikh Hasina's niece, Tulip Sadiq, who is an MP for the Labour Party, in fact, is now a minister, is here in the UK. And in fact, Sheikh Hasina's sister, Rahana, Tulip's mother, is also in the UK. So you can see why this could be a natural place for her to try to come to. And no doubt Tulip, as a person of influence these days in the Labour government, may be able to swing it for her if that is what she wants. But I just want to come back to correct what I heard earlier from your female contributor, apologies, Ambassador, who I think has a very inaccurate misunderstanding of what is going on in Bangladesh, who said she thought that the protests were led by the Jamaat and instigated and supported by China. I mean, I cannot tell you how delusional that view is as somebody who knows Bangladesh well. I mean, these protests came out of the fact that the law enforcement authorities killed at least 200,000 people. Had that not happened, then there would not have been an enormous amount of popular involvement in the protests. And you would not have been in a situation where if you went on the streets today, you would not find hardly a person who would not support the removal of Sheikh Hasina. She brought this situation completely on herself, and it is really a popular movement. There is no doubt all opposition groups are involved in some way, but that is not what this is about. This is about a popular sentiment throughout Bangladesh who had it with the Awami League and Sheikh Hasina, partly because they had been in power for 15 years and hadn't had any proper free and fair elections, partly because human rights violations were at a very, very poor level, and then because in the last 2 weeks, she's killed 200 citizens who were students, passers-by, including 30 children. That was a deep sear into the soul of Bangladesh.
All right, Mr. Bergman, half a second. Ambassador Sikri wants to reply. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, well, I would like to say very clearly that I am not delusional. I was repeating what happened, that it began as a quota reform movement and it morphed into something quite different, very different, because we know the Daily Star published the figures yesterday that 204 people were died, not 200,000 as you said, but 200, and out of that 53 were students. 53 were students, and the others were policemen and civilians and others who were also involved. They had given a detailed breakdown after examining bit by bit. It has been a quota reform movement and successfully led by the students. Sheikh Hasina had supported them in that right up till the Supreme Court verdict. But in the meanwhile, the clashes took place between all the political party youth wings, and this led to complete mayhem. And today, what is being shown in visuals about the attacks on Sheikh Mujib's statue, on his home in Dhanmandi, burning of Hindu homes. All this is not the case of students. I don't think there are any students on the streets anymore. I don't think, as Mohammed Yunus said, they're celebrating. Are they celebrating by burning homes, by putting things on fire, by looting homes? This is not a celebration. So I am saying that the need is for stability. That's what my point was mainly that the army chief would be focusing on bringing stability into the situation by presenting the interim government proposal to the president, and that the new interim government can start working. The first thing he said in his own press conference, the army chief, that he would like the protesters to go away from the streets. Nobody's calling them students anymore. They're protesters who are there from different political parties.
David, a quick response. This is no longer
Can I respond to that? First of all, the ambassador has got the chronology completely wrong. On the 16th of July, 6 people were killed. In subsequent days, the next 10 days, a total of 200 people were killed by law enforcement authorities. They were almost all shot. That is a reality, okay? Subsequently, yesterday, there were 100 people killed, and it was a result of clashes between both the protesters and the student wing of the Awami League. But why did the Awami League instruct the student wing to go out on the streets when there were huge protests of people calling for the removal of Sheikh Hasina? Clearly, that was a recipe for disaster. It was predictable, it was foreseeable. I said that the night before, this shouldn't happen, but in fact it happened. In terms of your other point, which is a very important point, I completely accept the issue of law and order and the issue of recriminations right now is crucial. And it is I'm really concerned about the fact that people are taking recriminatory measures against the Awami League that is really problematic, and maybe even against minority communities, that is really problematic. And the army should have been much better
And
prepared
these are
to
not
deal with that.
students. And these are not students who are doing it. These are not
Oh, no, of
students who are
course they're
doing
not
it.
students. We are talking about the population of Bangladesh. We are talking about a movement which incorporates. I can tell you, my family is in Bangladesh right now. They're involved, and everybody's all their
I
friends are
know.
involved. There is no
All right, okay,
one-
both of you
there is
hold on
no
for one
I'm
sec.
sorry,
I want to
who's
go
not
across
I
involved.
to.
know Honorable Kamal Hussain very well. I know him very well. He's a
One sec.
dear friend of
Let's
mine.
just, I want to move on to my other
Kamal
voices.
Hussain.
Mohammed Al Masoom Khan, a senior journalist in Bangladesh and an associate with Millennium TV, joins us right now. The big question now, Mr. Khan, what's happening on the streets? We've had journalists report to us just a little while back that police stations were still being looted. Is that what you're hearing?
Thank you so much. This situation in Bangladesh is very critical and very difficult situation around our own country, Bangladesh. Because all our students and people, few days, few weeks, Bangladesh, very well, and all our world journalists, political person, prime minister, president, very know. This decision today, the Bangladesh Prime Minister and Bangladesh Prime Minister Sister Sheikh Rehana leave Bangladesh. But this time he leave India. So Bangladesh people ask, Bangladesh minority, Hindus, all are people this time say a peaceful Bangladesh. So what this situation create this time every our Bangladeshi minority people say uh, don't any violence. This time, some elegant people attack Aum League political
And I
leaders.
just want to go back to, and let's try and get Salman Saeed back on if we can in just a few moments. We'll try and get him back. But for the benefit of our viewers, I just want to go through some of the images that we've been seeing, which really have defined today. And I think that's one of the images of people just, out of control, entering Sheikh Hasina's house, making off with her with her furniture, with her utensils, etc., etc. Her father, the late Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Bangladesh, his statue being defiled over there, any number of people crossing the gates, jumping over the gates and breaking open the gates later on of the official residence of Sheikh Hasina, who then had to bid a hasty retreat from that place, got onto a helicopter, went to the Kurmitola Air Base, got onto a Hercules transport, then flew to Delhi, to the Hindon Air Force Base. That's where she is now. Sorry, go ahead.
The decision created 6 months ago. Some people, some entire our humanity, the Bangladeshi, our current only government.
Right.
This decision is very difficult.
No, it is very difficult, and I just wanted to get a couple of more reactions on that.
China's and Pakistan intelligence ISS back the wall.
Okay, Mr. Khan, hold on. I just wanted to go back to Sushant, who's been waiting very patiently. The macro picture over here, from an India standpoint, what are some of the broader concerns, Sushant?
I think, Vishnu, one of the concerns is, of course, the kind of pogroms which we are seeing on the streets against the Hindus. I wonder, there is this mindless denial that all of this is students. It's all nice and happy. Even the professor earlier, the Nobel laureate, all kinds of people these days get Nobel Prizes. People are enjoying on the streets. Maybe they enjoy by burning Hindu homes. I don't know. But the kind of exodus of Hindus that has taken place from about 22-24% of the population, they're down to what, 8% or something. And everybody's in denial. So one is, of course, that this latest round of what is happening, will it lead to another exodus of the Hindu community? And then, if you have a refugee crisis, how are you going to handle it? Secondly, we don't know what kind of stability, if at all, is going to come to Bangladesh right now. Right now, things are in a flux. We are hearing of all kinds of violence on the streets. We don't know who is actually leading these mobs, whether these mobs can, the law and order can be restored by
Nobody is
the
leading
army.
them, Sushant. That's the big worry.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I asked it in a rhetorical manner that who's leading these mobs.
Yeah.
And if nobody is leading, and because we are seeing violence across the country, right? It's not just in Dhaka, not just this large mob which was making a beeline for Dhaka, which is carrying out this kind of, the rape and pillage which is taking place. It's happening across the country. So the question then is, how do they restore order? And then they formed an interim government. Will this interim government be acceptable to all sides, or will there be a big furor over this particular government? And will this government then be able to restore some kind of semblance of law and order and of running the government, which has been in a state of disarray for a fair bit of time? So I think there are going to be serious concerns. And then whatever replaces that government finally, will they follow the policy of the past 15 years back, where the Jamaat and the BNP were together in government, and they were sponsoring Islamist terrorists, they were sponsoring separatist groups in India, terrorism was coming into India from Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina clamped down on that activity, which is what led to a lot of good developments between India and Bangladesh, because the Indian security concerns were taken care of. So these are very serious concerns. And then, of course, you already have a Myanmar on our borders, which is in a flux. You have a Bangladesh, which is God knows where it's going. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very serious crisis on our eastern borders.
All right.
Which is what we'll be looking at, which Vishnu really means that a kind of a third front is opening up for India. We have
it's a nightmarish situation. And if things aren't controlled fast, I'm just going back to Salman Said, who joins us once again. Salman, has there been any attack more than the one odd attack which has been reported against minorities? Is there something larger and more systemic in your country which is already starting?
So right now we are, there's been a lot of attacks in political party people's house, the ruling party people's house, and the police station. That is more worrying at the moment. The police stations are really place where there are more arms and ammunitions. As I told you earlier, just the police station right inside my house, it's just a few hundred meters walking distance, right? I can still see the fires are burning. People are making sounds. They are taking out guns and firing in the skies. I don't know what they're doing, but it's kind of dangerous. Also, normal civilians having lethal weapons in hands. We don't know what they're going to do with this. Not everyone is celebrating. Some are taking advantage of this situation. I was going out to pick up my wife a few hours back from their celebration from the Parliament building site. There also, when I was crossing Prime Minister's home, I could see a huge traffic. They're trying to enter the Prime Minister's building residence and trying to loot everything. But till the celebration is fine. But now the law and order needs to come in some control. I think the military will, or the police, they will restore at one point. Just we don't know how the security of the people, lives of people, and their belongings will be said. That is the problem. As I speak, I don't know if you can hear on my background, there are sounds of cars being broken, police cars basically. I don't know. I can try to show you if you can see the fire from my window. The road, and then you see the light. There are fires still burning.
Yes, we can see that. Go ahead, keep talking. Describe what you're seeing.
Yeah. So there, I can see exactly there. I was there in front of that building. People were chanting slogans, and they were happy. And everything was. They're saying, the ruling party Awami League has left. Now they will catch each of the Awami League. They were shouting slogans. Each of the Awami League people will be caught, and then they will kill them or something like that. So it's a lot of brutal anger, of these decades of people suppressed. They could not come out of their home. Other believer of other political parties, they could not talk. They were hiding. All of them have come out. And when police, there's so much corruption in this country. I was talking to a couple of students when the celebration march was going around Sydney. I was walking through and I was talking with the students who are the real heroes. These students, these young kids were the real heroes of this protest and this freedom. Since myself, these students, we haven't seen the 71 war, but we have seen 2024's.
No, but Salman, let me ask you this question. Would you agree that this began as a student protest but ended up becoming something much larger? And that the protest that you're seeing now is not so much about the quota, right? But it is, it's about something much larger. It's being called freedom and democracy by some people, but it could be an opportunity for strange forces, dangerous forces in Bangladesh to take advantage of the situation, and the entire situation becomes even worse. Is that a worry?
I will. It is a worry, but I will also agree it was a small protest started by the students of Dhaka University as a quota movement. But then, when the corrupt government officials were trying to mobilize them and motivate them to say what they wanted, these young kids were very smart. They called themselves Gen Z. They're the generation who fought for there was a traffic rules and regulations.
Sure. I just wanted to quickly go across to Muhammad Ali Masoom Khan once again. Mr. Khan, who is in this interim government that is being formed? Do we have any names?
Okay. This time, our army chief and all our army high official person this night meeting our honorable president Shahabuddin. At this meeting attend all our Bangladesh political parties high official, but this meeting without Aumi League. This situation under this time our generation, our people, all our Hindus, minority people, this situation, all our people, all ask a peaceful democracy country running in Bangladesh. So Bangabhaban has destroyed all our student people get some rover. This honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina usual.
Sir, the line is coming and going. I'll come back to you in just a moment. David Bergman, what exactly is the way forward? And do you have confidence in the ability of the Bangladesh Army Chief and the Bangladesh Army to try and bring normalcy? Because he has made it absolutely clear that there will be no force per se. They will not open fire. But in a situation like this, when you've got crazy mobs out there, how do you actually control these mobs?
I was very surprised that the army had not planned the situation better, so that they were out in the country and able to ensure that the scenes that we are seeing, which are concerning, undoubtedly, because didn't occur, because it was foreseeable that there's a huge amount of anger. I mean, I get the understanding from your speakers from India that they don't recognize this, but from a context of Bangladesh, there is huge amount of anger and resentment against the government, against Sheikh Hasina, which obviously focused in these huge protests that took over from the quota protests. And that has come out. And so it was very obvious that you would have a lot of emotions which are pent up and which are coming out in the kind of violence that we're seeing now. And I'm very concerned that the army hasn't been able to get this under control, and they absolutely must do, because clearly this cannot go on, and the whole idea of a positive future will not be quite so obvious to anyone if it doesn't happen. I think putting that to one side and assuming the army does able to manage that, then there's the question of how successful the interim government can be. They have a huge challenge ahead of them, because you have to recognize that the Awami League Party took control over all the major institutions of state. And so they are full of Awami League loyalists. And that was the way the Awami League was able to rule as effectively as they have. And so it's going to be difficult for an interim government that's going to try to govern in a different way. They're going to have to use the judiciary, the civil service, the law enforcement authorities to do much of their work. And if they remain partisan to the Awami League, that is going to prove to be very difficult. There's also another issue about accountability. There is a popular demand that those involved in these killings be brought to account. Now, can that be done fairly? Is the army the right entity to be involved in the investigations, which I believe is what they've said they are? I mean, that's of concern, because you don't want a situation where you return to the same old lack of due process as many people thought existed under the Awami League.
Right.
So there are tremendous amount of challenges ahead for the new government.
All right, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. An absolute crisis in Bangladesh at this stage. What happens tomorrow or going onwards? Will there be some sort of control on this crowd? A huge regional impact already, and no one really seems to know where this is all headed. We're going to take a short break at this stage. We're going to come back to the story. Just for the benefit of our viewers, a quick summary. Bangladesh was plunged into crisis far more than what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina having to flee the country. She's now in India. We don't know where she's headed next. She's in the National Capital Region. She's met the National Security Advisor. Protesters stormed into her house. Lakhs of people out on the streets of Dhaka. These are images from inside her house. They pilfered, they stole. The army came in a press conference, said that they were now in charge. An interim government was being formed, advising people to go back home, but promising that the army would not open fire. At the moment, nobody knows who's leading the protesters. The situation seems to be completely out of control. A major regional crisis, and one that could potentially continue to get out of control. We're going to take a short break. Coming up after that, the former Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla on this situation in Bangladesh.
Get the magic of the best working for you now.
Link your payment cards once, collect rewards forever.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
So a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
After a great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport, where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ हैं.
ਉਹਦੀ performance ਸਹੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਮਿਲੇ.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world, and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
Some people say the metaverse will only be virtual. One day this lecture hall will be made of.
After great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ है.
वो परफॉर्मेंस आई सारे दी ते बढ़िया रिजल्ट्स मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
After great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ है.
वो परफॉर्मेंस आई सारे दी ते बढ़िया रिजल्ट्स मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ है.
वो परफॉर्मेंस आई सारे दी ते बढ़िया रिजल्ट्स मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today because they have their champion back home, Kuldeep Yadav.
Desperation for each and everyone to go there and win the World Cup, and we did it.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
So a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
After great victory by Indian team, and today we are reporting from Mohali International Airport where we are showing these visuals. Arshdeep हमारे साथ है.
वो परफॉर्मेंस आई सारे दी ते बढ़िया रिजल्ट्स मिले.
We are in the city of Kanpur today.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download.
Sheikh Hasina flies to India after being ousted as Bangladesh's Prime Minister. An ugly end to Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule. The army takes over as Bangladesh slips into anarchy. Our big NDTV exclusive, Sheikh Hasina's son on NDTV. He says, "My family asked Sheikh Hasina to leave the country amid chaos." Sheikh Hasina's son tells NDTV, hope elections are held soon. Meanwhile, NSA Ajit Doval meets Sheikh Hasina at the IAF Air Base. He receives Sheikh Hasina there. The Prime Minister also briefed at the Cabinet Security meeting. Jaishankar briefs PM Modi amid the Bangladesh crisis. Meanwhile, the Bangladesh army says the curfew will be lifted across Bangladesh. Bangladesh schools and businesses to reopen as well. The army's bid to restore order amid anarchy. India ramps up vigil as the Bangladesh situation spirals out of control. The BSF issues a high alert along the border. Meanwhile, curfew also along Meghalaya's border with Bangladesh. Meanwhile, in Wayanad, moving scenes as a mass burial of the unidentified bodies have been conducted. Rescue operations enter day 7. Meanwhile, in the hills, the death toll rises to 14 amid the Himachal cloudburst. Lakshya Sen misses another bronze at the Paris Games. This as coach Prakash Padukone schools the athletes. He says athletes must take responsibility for the loss. And it's endgame Sheikh Hasina, with Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule coming to an ugly end. Well, anarchy on the streets of Bangladesh and truly unprecedented scenes as Sheikh Hasina was forced to resign after an army ultimatum, and she is now flown out of Bangladesh and she landed at the Hindon Air Base in India. In fact, she is still there. What is her next moves? Whether she will seek asylum in the UK, as many reports suggest, that is still unclear. But unprecedented scenes on the streets of Bangladesh. There you can see the defining image of the day with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's statue being vandalized. The army, of course, has taken over Bangladesh. Protests continue unabated across the country. This as the army chief has appealed for peace. He has also said that the nationwide curfew will be lifted. But there's celebration as well across Bangladesh, because this was a long-standing demand. The army chief has said that we won't open fire, but protesting students and all those protesting must return to their home. Meanwhile, the impact on India, the BSF has issued a high alert along the Indo-Bangla border. The Meghalaya government has also issued a curfew along the border. But our big NDTV exclusive, well, my colleague Mara Shakil spoke to Sheikh Hasina's son. But before that, let's take a look at the report as to how the situation panned out through the day.
End of an era in Bangladesh, with former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigning and fleeing from the country, landing at India's Hindon Air Base. Lakhs of demonstrators took to the streets to celebrate an end to her 15-year rule. The army has taken over, announcing that an interim government would be formed. Protests and clashes resulted in hundreds of deaths and thousands injured since mid-July. The army chief urged protesters to work with them to bring order back to the country.
কোনো গোলাগুলির প্রয়োজন নাই আমি আদেশ দিয়ে দিয়েছি সেনাবাহিনী কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না পুলিশ কোনো গোলাগুলি করবে না
Defying military curfew, lakhs of Bangladeshi protesters took to the streets to celebrate her resignation, some even calling it a second day of independence.
Actually, it's our freedom. We get freedom after 15 years. And we proud our students about our students. But now we have missed Mugdho side and a lot of students actually.
Angry